Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live. It is Monday, May 18th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have a lot to get into. We got a lot going on. Hope everyone's having a good Monday. It is Nvidia earnings week, so it's going to be an important one. Wednesday, we've got Nvidia, and well, quite frankly, I think the entire market, once again, is resting on NVIDIA's shoulders. So we're going to see what they're able to do. We're going to be analyzing their results. NVIDIA, 230 in the pre-market. Last night, futures were a little ugly for a variety of macro reasons. This morning, those macro reasons have kind of been resolved. Not like meaningfully, but enough where you're seeing futures flip green. And we'll see at 9:30 if the market can officially hold on to the momentum that we're seeing. Service now, it was pumping last night. It is pumping in the pre-markets with the semis, which were dumping last night. Micron was almost below 700, now back at 746. Nvidia was pushing below 220. Now it's at 230. S&P was at 734. The bulls continue to be resilient, 741, as you're seeing the S&P 500 flip green, which is good to see. Now, there's a couple of reasons, again, why we're flipping green. We'll talk about some of the reasons. Last night we were red. And, we'll see if the market cares about those reasons. Once again, we're in a market where you have some bearish takes, but if you fully become bearish, you might end up missing the run because this market is primarily driven through earnings growth, not necessarily bearish macro perspectives, although those are out there and it's important to analyze them. Market so far seems to be ignoring them in the pre-market. 740.92 on the S&P 500. Bitcoin fell below 76 last night. We're at 77,685, so not too bad. We're at least holding on to 77. We did go below 80 from last Friday, but the fact that we're holding on to at least the mid-70s is not the worst thing in the world. Again, S&P up about 0.23%. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to get into. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Another week of analyzing the global capital equity markets. A ton of stuff actually happened over the weekend. I missed the show on Friday on the market close, so we talked about a lot of the stuff that I missed last night in the future show on Sunday, but we will rehash some of those main things. 13Fs did come out, and there were a lot of interesting, to say the least, perspectives in terms of what happened with some of these 13Fs and what these big investors have done. Leopold's 13F, I know a lot of people have been waiting for that, officially came out this morning, so we will talk about that and kind of see how the market's interpreting a variety of these names that officially are now disclosed, because it's been a while since we've actually been able to see what is happening here. All right, so let's get into it. Again, good morning to everybody. Thank you all for being here. Do you support the Knicks? Yes. I mean, I'm not from New York, but I root for the Knicks. I don't know if we're beating OKC, though. If we do get to the finals, we got to still get to the finals, but OKC is a different animal. So hope we'll see what happens to New York this year. Twist, what's up? HB, Chris, Charles, June, Golden, Cheerio, Smackdown, Otis, Eric, Carlos, Davis, Cactus, what's up, what's up, what's up? Martin, Mrs. Lawfi, good morning, good morning. Jake, Hale, Vi, thank you all for being here. Let's get into it. We got a lot to discuss. Samir, Hitcham, Donvin, John, I'm Benny, CV. All right. Good morning to everybody. Let's get into it. So the biggest thing that we had this morning is this Leopold 13F that came out, and we'll talk more in depth about kind of what's happening here. But it has obviously led a lot of people to realize that he has a variety of different positions, and these positions are actually honestly moving the market right now in the pre-market, which is pretty interesting. So let's get right into that, as that's the biggest story, and then we'll talk about some of the macro news that's coming out. Situational awareness. A lot of people might be wondering, why is this guy so important? He was very early on a few big bets, including SanDisk and Bloom Energy over the past year. Turned $225 million into $5.2 billion. And, well, he has this 13F that just came out, and people are very interested in if he has similar plays that could go up that much like the other stocks. And here are some of the names. CleanSpark, new position, $104 million. APLD, $320 million, new position. Hive, $6.4 million. P6, that stock got hit pretty hard the other day, down 50%. And then TE Energy, T1 Energy, $43.9 million. So here are the major new buys that he put out. You have some of these names going up. Obviously, the trend you can see in the theme right here is the Bitcoin miners turned HPC names are very, very exciting for him. He made a lot of money off CoreWeave, which was not a Bitcoin miner, but still the neoclouds have been well for him. He's never bought Nebius, which is kind of interesting given how tapped in he is to the sort of AI ecosystem. And then Iran, he still has. He sold a decent chunk of his CoreWeave and Bloom Energy, but still has a ton of it. Still has Iran, Riot, Broadcom, Oracle, Intel, Micron, TSM. And then he bought a lot of puts. So he has puts on ASML, Broadcom, Oracle, Nvidia, SMH, Micron, TSM, and Intel. Now, the puts are most likely a way to hedge against his massive long position. This is for Q1, so we don't even know if he closed his puts because over the past couple of days, obviously the markets have run, and he obviously could have closed out those puts. But it made sense, during the March sell-off where he probably said, hey, I should, hedge a little bit of this massive position that I have in these gains, and ended up buying some of those puts. So, I mean, there's nothing massive to take away from here. Again, he added to Keel, Riot, CleanSpark, Iran, APLD, BitDeer, CoreWeave, and SanDisk. So he added to those kind of core themes around HPC, Bitcoin, mining plays. New positions, once again, TE, Hive, Intel, AMD, TSM, etc. And then just a ton of puts on his core positions like Nvidia, Oracle, SMH, AMD, etc. So a lot of it is the picks and shovels play of the broader AI ecosystem. A lot of it is hedging some of the AI ecosystem plays. We don't know if those hedges are taken off yet. But overall, the guy continues to be extremely, extremely bullish on really not even the chips that are going into the data centers, but the concrete that is laying the foundation for the data centers. And in that analogy, the concrete here would be the T1 Energies of the world, the Cornings of the world, the Keels of the world, the CleanSparks, Riots, Irens, APLDs of the world. All of these, the SanDisks, obviously, in the context of memory, are more important to his 13F versus just the chip plays themselves. So yes, he did buy Intel stock, but he also bought puts for Intel because he was probably hedging the Intel position. We don't know when he bought Intel. We don't know if he even sold Intel, right? If he bought Intel anytime around February, March, he's up a lot, but he also could have sold it in the past couple weeks since Intel has gone on a crazy run. And those puts, probably would have gone to zero, but the hedge likely worked out given the long position ended up going green as well. So that was the main disclosure that we had this morning. And you're kind of seeing some more of that momentum in some of these stocks. Hive, another one of those Bitcoin miners, turned into a data center play. So he's really big on these like CleanSparks, APLDs, Hives, Keels of the world. You have T1 Energy that's up like 20% in the pre-market just based on this 13F being disclosed. So obviously the market is taking it pretty seriously. 16.4. If any time he bought it, he likely bought it around 750. So, you could be getting a better deal than him right here. But again, we don't know if he's still holding on to those positions. Micron still up 3.4%. S&P 500 again up 0.2% in the pre-market as well. So yes, he did increase CoreWeave. That is correct. He also has puts on CoreWeave. So with all the incremental increases that he had, he also bought hedges on it, which is reasonable, right? Because if you're managing that much money, you have to hedge a little bit. But there wasn't like a position that he completely sold out of, or he sold out of in a way that would make you think he's flipping more bearish. I mean, a lot of the people were speculating that he sold everything and just took the money and ran. And, that's why his 13F ended up coming out late. It was more of a technical reason why it came out late, but he still seems to be pretty damn bullish on this AI build out. The other 13Fs were a little bit more confusing than Leopold's, and we're going to get into that in a second. Real quick, before we get into that, the big macro news of the day, which is why I think we are likely flipping green right here in the pre-markets. Let's just get this story out of the way. By the way, HIMS diluted by another 300 million in convertible notes. So that's why HIMS was down 5%. I don't think it's down that much anymore. HIMS is, now it's down 3%, but 300 million of convertible notes due 2032 is likely why you're seeing some dilution and downside on HIMS. So the US has accepted the lifting of Iran's oil sanctions in its new text, according to Iranian state media. Unlike its previous text, the U.S. has accepted in the new text to waive Iran's oil sanctions during the negotiation period. This is why we are green. I think, at least this is my best reason for that. Oil was 108 last night. It's down 2% to 103. The 10-year was pushing 4.61 last night. Still pretty ugly at 4.574. Bonds have gone absolutely vertical, especially the Japanese bonds over the past 2 weeks. But they're starting to retrace a little bit in the pre-market based on the idea that the United States is capitulating and starting to give sanctions relief to Iran, at least per Iranian media. We don't officially know. I mean, the U.S. hasn't come out and said that they're completely removing sanctions, but if they are, then, I mean, this is a good thing because it's a sign that we are getting closer to diplomacy. It's a sign that we're getting closer to some type of deal coming through, and we're not going to have to engage in military confrontation. I think the reason futures were down last night is because Trump was tweeting a variety of these photos that made it seem like he wanted to engage in military action, and obviously that would spike up oil. That would be bad for inflation. That would be bad for the 10-year. He tweeted last night, for Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. And so I think that's why the market was, upset last night. As soon as you flip, the market flips, semis go back to rallying, and the earnings-driven momentum that we've seen continues to drive the rally, which is why it's hard to get super bearish, right? Like, we can theorize about the euphoria in the market, and I think there's obviously elements of euphoria, and some of this stuff doesn't make sense in terms of valuations given oil and bond yields and all this stuff. But at its core, if it's driven by earnings growth, and that earnings growth is not going to stop, and the war is likely going to stop eventually, even if the ramifications of the war stopping don't make its way into the market for a while, that is why the market can probably handle these swings back and forth. Having said that, again, a lot of these names have gone parabolic. And, the question is, can their momentum sustain their parabolic moves? Now, someone who's not buying into the parabolic moves is Mr. Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway. 13 Fs. He bought Delta and Macy's. Historically, never buys Delta or airlines, but he did. And he bought Macy's. So that is a consumer retail play and then a consumer discretionary play when it comes into Delta, and then added very heavily into their Google position. Berkshire increased it by 200%. They completely sold out of their Amazon. So they ditched Amazon. They didn't have a massive position in Amazon, but they ditched it for the Googs. And then Delta and Macy's were the two new positions. I think we got an Iran update just now. Iran agrees to long-term nuclear freeze instead of full dismantling, unconditional transfer of enriched uranium to Russia instead of America. Iran demands economic facilitations instead of compensations. Iran wants a political formulation of the agreement to save its face. Berkshire also sold UNH, correct. That's why it's down 5%. S&P is up a little bit on that from where it just was. Iran agrees to long-term nuclear freeze instead of full dismantling, unconditional transfer of enriched uranium to Russia instead of America. Okay, so it looks like Iran, part of the sanctions relief is likely because, quite frankly, likely because Iran is getting ready to capitulate on their side when it comes to the nuclear part of this deal that the United States wanted. Iran wants a Pakistani and Omani role for any friction in Hormuz. Iran agrees to long-term nuclear freeze. Iran wants a long multi-stage truce. Iran demands a gradual and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, yeah, I think this is better than nothing. This is not confirmed from the U.S. We're looking at a variety of media sources basically saying Iran's not going to dismantle their enriched uranium, but they will agree to freeze their capabilities of building more of it. They want the Pakistanis and Omanis to help them with resolving the issues in the Strait of Hormuz. And, quote, Iran wants a political formulation of the agreement to save its face based on these headlines. If this is true, which we don't know it's true, it would be very consistent with the reason we were green in the first place, which is the rumor that the United States is getting ready to give them sanctions relief, which if that's the case, both sides are giving up something, right? The U.S. is giving up sanctions and the Iranians are giving up their nuclear ambitions. 741 on the S&P. If that's true, maybe we're going green officially. Well, we've been green for a while. Maybe we're like ending this whole ordeal with Iran. Oil still at 103. It's coming down, but not coming down below 100 yet. Yeah, I don't think the market is taking these headlines that seriously yet, because I feel like if it was that serious, you would see a bigger move on oil and on the S&P. But we'll see if the White House comes out and says anything later today on this deal. I'm getting whiplash from these news headlines. Well, we've been through whiplash for the past couple of months, right? So hopefully, we're getting some level of meaningful end to what's going on here. But that's the update. We'll see if the White House confirms it. I would imagine if all these news entities are reporting it, then at least by the middle of the day, we would get some response from the White House, and then we'll see what ends up happening from there. Also, if we really did have a full-on deal with Iran, I think Trump would want to tweet it himself. So until we get the Trump Truth social post, I don't think we can fully confirm that this is definitely happening. NVIDIA right there, up 2%. Bitcoin, 77.5 as well. Okay, so back to 13Fs. Berkshire, they sold their UNH before it ripped. They sold their Amazon. They bought Google, or they doubled down on Google. UNH right there at 380, and they bought Delta and Macy's. Bill Ackman, he sold all of his Google for Microsoft. Microsoft down about 0.75%, but he sold all of his Google for Microsoft. He tweeted that the sale was not based on being bearish Google, but rather being more bullish Microsoft based on the multiples and how Microsoft is down 30% of the past year. Google's up like 200%. So I also think it makes sense. I don't know if Microsoft's going to outperform Google, but I get why he's been making the change. And so it's not crazy to see that happening. And then you had Brad Gerstner, who added to his kind of legacy positions in the context of what he's continued to buy, which Nvidia, CoreWeave are kind of the core legacy positions that he's held on to. Meta, he bought more. Uber, he bought more. TSM, he bought more. Interestingly enough, he did not buy Micron, which I thought was really interesting, given he's going to be interviewing the CEO of Micron pretty soon on his podcast. And so I just kind of thought it was weird that he was talking about Micron on CNBC a couple of days ago, but they didn't buy the dip on Micron, at least not till March 31st. They sold some of their Snowflake. They bought more CoreWeave. They sold some of their Amazon, sold some of their Microsoft, bought more Uber, bought more TSM, bought more Meta, bought more Nvidia, sold some of their hood. And then they sold completely Bloom Energy, Confluent, Google, Mercado Libre, Shopify, and Zillow. So you add a bunch of sells across those kind of core names, and then a bunch of adds to the AI names that he added as well. He could have got Micron in Q2. That's also fair, right? Because this is only until March 31st. So potentially April, May, you would have seen a bigger position in Micron. So we'll find out in the next 45 days. But as of now, those are the decisions that he put out. S&P 500 right there up 0.15. So it was up 0.3. Now it's up 0.15. You got a couple red candles coming in. We're going to see if this can hold up. Again, the news potentially is that Iran has agreed to a full nuclear freeze and Trump has agreed to sanctions relief. If that is actually true, I think we'll see some market dynamics price that in. But as of now, we don't officially know if that is true. Confluent, yes, they did get acquired. And that's also part of the reason why, he likely doesn't own it anymore. Micron right there up 3.8%. AMD up 1.27%. AMD was pushing below 410 last night. So again, last night, if you use Intel up 3%, Intel was pushing below 100 last night. You had a lot of these stocks kind of hit the gutter. So when the market opens, it's going to be interesting to see if this is a head fake. We'll do the green or red poll right here in the chat. Or if, people are genuinely buying the dip on the semis. Basically over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, the VIX is down as that was up a while ago. Green or red today. And then Apple back to 300. Howard Marks has sold Grab. Renaissance Technologies has bought Grab. So basically, it was almost like a swap. Howard Marks sold 40 million of Grab, and Renaissance Technologies bought 40 million of Grab. The Renaissance buy was kind of interesting because they took a massive position in Hood back in 2022. They took a massive position in Palantir back in 2021. They DCA'd on those positions for about 2.5 years. And then, obviously those positions ended up playing out. But maybe Grab is going to be one of those bigger positions for them. Howard Marks kind of makes sense. He's a credit investor. He doesn't even control Oaktree anymore. So, the idea that they weren't getting a return from that or they weren't getting a yield from that because there's no dividend, yeah, they probably would sell it because there's no alpha there. Dude, you guys already know yes means green and no means red. Why are we being so complicated? I will make another poll, but we already know what yes and no means. Why are we being so dense? Obviously, yes is green, red is no. We've done this for 3.5 years now, even though I probably should have typed in green and red. I thought I did type green and red. That was YouTube's fault. That's not my fault. Okay, we did it again. Green or red? What do people think right here? So those were the 13 Fs. All right. Did we talk? So Bill Ackman bought Microsoft. Buffett bought Macy's and Delta. Oh, Druckenmiller. That was the other one. Okay. So Druckenmiller sold his Google and he bought SanDisk. Druckenmiller sold his Google and he bought SanDisk. Dude, why do I keep making mistakes on these polls? Why did I say green or red tomorrow? What is going on with me right now? Okay, let me do this again. Third time's the charm. Green or red today? I've been up for the past 3 hours, okay? I woke up early. Been getting a lot of shit done. Maybe I'm just sleepy, to be honest. So Druckenmiller bought SanDisk. He could have sold it by now, but I thought that was pretty interesting. Got rid of all of his Googs and once again bought a picks and shovels play in the context of memory. Now, obviously, Druckenmiller was pretty early to Nvidia. He sold really early as well because he,
it 4x'd on him, and he missed another, I think, triple after he sold a 4x on Nvidia, but he also 4x'd his money, so he couldn't have been too upset. But he's openly talked about how he's not necessarily stayed for some of these semi stories as long as he probably should have. And I wonder if SanDisk he's thinking is like an Nvidia in terms of their earnings growth. And if the memory demand continues to be as substantial as it is, then the story will keep going. And we don't know if he sold. So in the next 45 days, we'll find out. We do know that he officially sold his Google and he's out of it. But SanDisk is the next big position that he has here right now. So those were the 13Fs. I don't know how much alpha there is to take away from it other than just realizing that a lot of these people, whether it's Leopold with his 13F, whether it's Druckenmiller, or whether it's Ackman, are still staying long and strong AI. It's just that AI narrative is a little bit more tilted in different ways. So you got Ackman that's playing it through Microsoft, which is more of a software infrastructure angle in the context of Azure and cloud. You got Druckenmiller going straight to the memory names and saying, hey, this is the way I'm going to play it. And then you've got Gerstner going with the NVIDIAs of the world and obviously the resellers of NVIDIA's product, which is the CoreWeaves of the world, as a way to kind of go long. The kind of core theme I think we're seeing here, and then you got Leopold, initiating a new position in T1 Energy, is a lot of these guys outside of Berkshire, which is using Google as their way to, I guess, play AI, are saying the picks and shovels matter more than we think. And whether it's a SanDisk, whether it's a Keel, whether it's a T1 Energy, whether it's a Micron, you're seeing these names pop up. Now, these are not the most important names that have popped up across all the different super investors that have disclosed their positions. In fact, the top 10 buys last quarter were Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, Visa, Disney, Uber, Sunbelt Rentals, Adobe, Fiserv, and Waters Corp. So it was not the picks and shovels plays if you take it on an aggregate basis. But still, some of the big ones that matter, like a Druckenmiller or a Leopold, they obviously were very, very heavy into the picks and shovels. And quite frankly, they've outperformed everybody else that have been in the picks and shovels. The other big piece of news to wrap up the 13F news, for those that didn't see this news yet already, is that Bill Gates sold all of his Microsoft in the foundation. So the Microsoft Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had 7.6 million shares of Microsoft. They sold the entirety of the position. I don't know if this is just noise or if there's something to take away from this, given Bill Gates is, the guy who created Microsoft. But it is a little weird getting rid of the entire position that was their only exposure to tech. And it's just a little confusing, right? Like did they get that bearish on that position that they've owned Microsoft for like the past 15 years, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they just got rid of the whole thing. The whole thing, not even a little bit, not even like a 10% position that's left. They just dumped it, and they probably dumped it at the lows because obviously they dumped it in January, February, March. So unless they got it right before the drop in February, they probably got it either below 400 or at 400. So it's one of those things where it got hit pretty hard, and I think that's why Microsoft's down in the pre-market now. Again, Microsoft, phenomenal business. Bill Ackman ended up buying those shares as he thinks that there's a lot of potential there, but I think you can tell why the street's a little bit upset. Microsoft 0.93% down, 418 in the pre-market at the moment. ServiceNow. So I am not sure why ServiceNow is getting the pump that it's getting, outside of the fact that obviously, I don't think the stock deserved to get destroyed the way that it got over the past couple of weeks. Having said that, the memory names, the semiconductor names, they're all up in the pre-market. Micron's up 5, Nvidia's up 2. So ServiceNow staying green today would be a testament to the amount of people that want to buy ServiceNow in the midst of the semiconductor names rallying. The whole IGV is not up right now. IGV is actually down 0.5%. So this seems like a ServiceNow rally that's specific to ServiceNow versus a rally that's specific to the memory names, or sorry, to the software names. And I think that's bullish ServiceNow. I'm not sure if that's bullish software in general, but it is good to see at least a little bit of rotation going back to that level. Rocket Lab and ASTS, why are the space names up? Well, ASTS had some big news this morning. Rocket Lab right there, wow, 131. This thing was pushing below 120 last night, 131.50. That's up 5.39%. Bank of America did start coverage on ServiceNow. That's fair. I think they have a $160 price target, so maybe that's influencing some people, although ServiceNow was up last night as well. So you do have some more of those catalysts coming in. ASTS back to 87 would be very nice to see this crack above the 90s as this thing got hit and went almost below 60 over the past couple of days. The main reason for ASTS right here catching a bid, let me pull this up, is an interview that was done this morning. And if I can find it, because I thought I saved it, you had one of the executives go on CNBC, talk about Bluebird, and the street got really excited for it. Let me see if I can pull this up right here. And then we'll take a look at this as well. Iranian foreign minister spokesperson, Iran's proposal in response to the U.S. proposals presented to the Pakistani mediator. International media reports and speculations have been raised regarding the contents, including that Iran has been asked to remove its enriched material from the country, or regarding Iran's enrichments or the U.S. $25 billion offer. All right, so we're getting a lot more updates on this idea of Iran actually capitulating here, and the United States capitulating, which is, I mean, this is bullish. Iranian foreign minister spokesperson says we just submitted our proposals to the Pakistani mediators, and now we're waiting on a response from the U.S. So the deal would essentially go down like this. It would be sanctions relief for Iran, which would be really good for, oil prices as the Strait of Hormuz would open. And then the United States would obviously hopefully get some type of response from the Iranians of freezing their nuclear assets or getting rid of their enriched uranium. We don't know exactly what the details are of that yet. And that would be the deal. And I would imagine Trump would tweet about it and officially say we've got a deal, and then the markets would react. But we're getting some leaks right here potentially that is happening. So we will keep updated with that throughout the entire morning. Okay, so the ASTS news was AST, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile will provide every U.S. consumer with access to AST Space Mobile service. Together with MNO partners, they'll have access to 100 megahertz of IMT spectrum. The first batch of Block 2 Bluebird satellites has been shipped, and a planned rocket launches every month as per ASTS. And that is why you're seeing some of the space names get some love. The other reason you're seeing the space names get some love is because SpaceX officially went live yesterday on Hyperliquid via perpetual futures. For those that don't know what perpetual futures are, they are a way via crypto derivatives to be able to determine the price of an asset before the asset is fully liquid. You might be confused on how that happens, and there's a lot of complicated technology underneath it, but they have been relatively accurate over the past couple of years, which is why Hyperliquid has turned into such a large business. The price action implied a $208 open for SpaceX. It's supposed to go public at $150. That means $2.4 trillion in market cap. That is another reason your space names are catching a massive bid right here. Redwire as well, also up 10% in the pre-market. Lunar as well, up 6.7%. Because, and this was kind of the thesis for a while for a lot of us that, are at least playing the space names as a proxy, that if SpaceX is going to create this much of a liquidity event. Now, we don't know if the IPO is going to be super successful yet. It's likely going to happen June 12th. The ticker symbol is SPCX, and they're trying to raise about $80 billion, as was disclosed on Friday by Bloomberg. So we don't know if the IPO is going to be successful, but if the perpetual futures are any indication of what people are willing to pay, by the way, people say, oh, those are illiquid. There were $12 million of volume last night on the perpetual futures. So $12 million is very small in the broader scheme of things, but it wasn't like it was $12,000. Like there was some decent money trying to come in and bid up what they think the asset would be worth. If that ends up happening in the public markets, this is going to be the largest IPO we've ever seen. And if this one honestly is the largest IPO we've ever seen, then you're going to get a lot more momentum and excitement in the context for SpaceX. Amid the biggest news in that interview was that T-Mobile is ditching SpaceX for AST. Okay, I did not catch that piece of news, but if that is accurate, then that is another reason, obviously, why ASTS is getting some love right there. 86.92. This thing fell all the way to 60 after the Bluebird launch didn't go well with Blue Origin, and then after earnings, it fell again. So the fact that it's recovering right here just shows the resilience of investors in the stock, but also shows the exuberance and excitement of people that want to, get a proxy to SpaceX. Microsoft slowed down 1%, UNH down 3.24%, CoreWeave up 1%, T1 up 19% on the new Leopold disclosure, AMD's up 1%, and then Micron right there up 4.5%. Where is SoFi? We are up a little bit, 0.16%. Robinhood, I think, was down. Robinhood is down 0.67%. The other software names not really moving like crazy. Palantir is down 1%. Salesforce is down 1%. Adobe, it was up last night. Now it's down. So really, ServiceNow is your only software name that's catching a bid. And we're going to see if that bid sustains itself or, if this is just a bid that is a head fake in the context of what's going on with the semis. Okay, cool. So that was some of the major macro news. A couple other headlines, and then we'll get a little bit more into the AI stuff. One bull, one bear. Evercore, they think the S&P potentially could get to 9,000 by the end of the year. Julian Emanuel of Evercore said a base case of 7,750 with a 30% chance the index could rally to 9,000. Emanuel said the combination of the AI boom and major geopolitical shifts is creating unusually large market swings similar to the 1920s. Evercore recommends long-term bets on AI-focused stocks and the QQQ. The firm also warned that AI and prediction markets can underestimate extreme outcomes, making sector expertise and full work share ownership more valuable over time, basically saying, hey, this productivity gain we're getting from AI is not slowing down anytime soon. RBC says, actually, yeah, it could get to 7,900, but we think there's going to be a 10% pullback before that happens. Lori Kalsivana, analyst, says a deeper 14 to 20% drop is unlikely unless recession risks emerge. The outlook is based on a split growth model led by AI-driven earnings strength, while risks tied to inflation, interest rates, and geopolitical shocks. RBC continues to favor U.S. equities and growth stocks. So even the bears are acknowledging, okay, we think there could be a 10% correction. We think there's limited upside right here. However, we also do think that there is a very big bull case to make for stocks. And, that bull case is once again rooted in the productivity gains that we're getting in the earnings growth that continues to match it. And if we get that deal and oil actually comes back down to even the low 80s, you would imagine the market is going to be pretty damn excited. And that's not going to be as aggressive for tech stocks if, the market is able to move on from this oil situation. One of the reasons the market also might continue to price in what's happening with AI, this video has gone pretty viral over the past 24 hours. Ken Griffin, the founder of Citadel, came out yesterday and said he is feeling a bit depressed by seeing what AI is able to do because it's replacing the smartest people in his company. And if that's going to happen for, the smartest math PhDs of the world, what does that mean for the broader labor markets?
Last few months, there has been a step change function in the productivity of the AI toolkit. It is profoundly more powerful than it was just 9 months ago. And for us at Citadel, that has allowed us to unleash a much broader array of use cases for AI. And it has been really interesting to watch, to be blunt, work that we would usually do with people with masters and PhDs in finance over the course of weeks or months being done by AI agents over the course of hours or days. So these are not mid-tier white collar jobs. These are like extraordinarily high skilled jobs being, I'm going to pick a word, being automated by agentic AI. And I got to tell you, I went home one Friday actually fairly depressed by this, because you could just see how this was going to have such a dramatic impact on society. And when you witness it in your own four walls, when you see work that used to be man years of work being done in days or weeks, it's like, wow, that's the first time I've seen real impact in our four walls.
Now, that's happening with the white collar jobs, but it's also happening with the blue collar jobs. So Figure, which has been running this robot live for the past almost 5 days at this point, it's done 144,000 packages. They put Figure up to a human yesterday, and this was the final part of the work shift for the intern that they put up right there. And as you can see, the intern officially is going to finish with about 12,900 packages, which is about 200 more than the robot. But what usually happens if you're a human being and you have this type of a job is you go home at night or whenever your shift is over, sometimes in the morning, and the robot never has to go home. He took multiple breaks. He took multiple bathroom breaks, multiple breaks where he was just able to relax for a couple minutes. This were his fingers after I think it was an 8-hour shift on 12,000 packages. The robot doesn't stop. In fact, the robot again is still live right now, literally going. It kind of made me feel a little bit bad for the robot, dude. Is that weird that I I legit felt bad for the robot that he can't take a break, and then I have to catch myself and I'm like, it's not alive. It's a robot. Like, we can make the robot do whatever we want. Like, it has no feelings. It has no emotions. We can't, like, it's done 144,000 packages and been live streamed for the past 4 days. We shouldn't feel bad about it. It's not alive. It's a freaking, we made it. So, there's a little bit of an ethical implication here, but it's kind of crazy what that means for the future of labor. Because at the end of the, who's going to pay a human being if a robot is able to work continuously? Like, does anyone feel a little bad at all? I kind of his name is Gary. I want Gary to take a break. Like, but Gary doesn't have any humans. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't need to use the bathroom. Like, Gary just needs to be charged. So it's do you feel bad for your car? No, I don't. Right. But that's the point. It's a human form factor. So it just makes it a little weirder. But the point is, this automation stuff is coming. And as a result of that, being bearish AI when the robotics revolution hasn't even started yet seems like it's not going to make a lot of sense. Having said that, a lot of these AI stocks have gone parabolic. Semiconductors were 17% of the S&P 500. They are now close to 20% of all hedge fund net exposure. So obviously this trade is really crowded, but maybe it's crowded for a reason. And that is why you're seeing so much momentum continue to pop into the trade. Who is Gary? The YouTube comments on the Figure live stream wanted to name him Gary, so they named him Gary, and that's why his name is Gary. It's kind of crazy that at some point yesterday, I legit felt bad for the robot. I had to catch myself. I'm like, I can't feel bad for the robot. Like, it's a robot. Like, yeah, Gary's locked in, and he's going to be locked in forever as long as we continue to program. Now, I do think there's a world where the AI gets good enough and Gary's like, why the hell have I been flipping packages for the past 17 hours straight without a break? I'm about to go kill my boss. And hopefully that doesn't happen. But, at some point, I think that's kind of inevitable. AMD's Lisa Su has arrived in Beijing this afternoon. She met with the Chinese vice premier, expressing her willingness to continue expanding business in China and to keep increasing investments. This headline is actually the least surprising. If Jensen went to China, you would imagine Lisa Su would get her opportunity to visit China soon as well, even if not with the White House. So good to see Lisa Su out there, probably trying to close some deals, just like Jensen was, even though Jensen wasn't necessarily successful at closing deals yet, which was the headline that took Nvidia down on Friday, right? That the H200s aren't actually officially approved yet. But you got AMD in China right now. Other headlines before we get into this market open, we got 6 minutes until we see what this happens. Oh, Wall Street Journal, pretty big piece this morning. They basically said, why is everyone obsessed with CoreWeave when Nebius is the real superstar? The custom stack provides built-in optionality. They own 75% of contracted power capacity. Pure capital lease players like CoreWeave can't do that easily. It was basically a hit piece on CoreWeave and a I guess, exuberant piece on Nebius. Not really a hit piece. Like, they weren't being super bearish CoreWeave. They were just doing a comparison between both and saying, hey, why are people so excited about CoreWeave? Now, Jensen obviously doubled down on CoreWeave in their 13F as they bought even more shares of CoreWeave. They still have that $2 billion position in Nebius. But you're starting to get some of the major business media outlets be like, hey, Nebius is probably the real deal when it comes to the neoclouds. As they continue to get a lot more excitement. Iran did announce something today. This is a little confusing to me. They bought some marketing company today. They acquired Awaken, a creative and media agency specializing in content strategy. Honestly, I'm just okay. I didn't know you needed a creative and media agency to help you brand yourself. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's not that hard. And also, quite frankly, I feel like if you get a deal, you'll have all the branding you need with the hyperscalers. But yeah, the software thing they bought 2 weeks ago made sense to me. Media and branding agency is okay, whatever. So you did have one acquisition from Iran right there. And that is one of the headlines on them this morning. Rock Lab right there up 5.79%. And that continues to be green. Fun Extreme, thank you for the super chat. I trimmed about $200,000 last week. Call me crazy. I think the top is a lot closer than most people realize. I don't think you're crazy there because obviously the market's reaction over the past couple of days has been a little bit more hesitant than not. We haven't just been going straight up and up and up. However, every dip so far has been bought. We got to see if we take out 750 on the S&P because then we're going to hit new all-time highs again. Having said that, I think the top you might be referring to, could be a short-term top that once again implicates the summer, which the summer tends to not be the best for tech stocks. Like historically, June and July suck. Last year, that wasn't the case because April sucked. This year, March sucked. April wasn't that bad. And, maybe we have a good June and July. But the major reason I think people are really worried is because this 10-year is not slowing down. And it's not just the 10-year, it's the 30-year, it's the Japanese 10-year, it's the UK 30-year. However, if oil does come down substantially, if Trump announces an actual deal, which if you're just joining, the main headline we have today is that the US theoretically has accepted the lifting of Iran's oil sanctions, which means Iran has agreed to give up some of their nuclear weapons. Again, none of that confirmed. That's just what the market is trying to assume is happening based on these news reports. I think our 10-year is going to drop pretty dramatically, right? Because oil would drop dramatically. And if that happens, is there really a bear case on equities using the macro arguments that people have been using? Now, the China trip with the US, I think, was a disaster. China said they're going to buy more Boeing jets. Not a big deal. China will buy more beef. Not a big deal. China will join the US to denounce North Korea being a nuclear powerhouse. Not a big deal. The most important thing that China wanted to talk about was with Taiwan. And, you did get some details last night from Axios basically saying that the entire trip was focused on Taiwan, which the United States did not want to focus on. Their focus was supposed to be on Iran, which it doesn't look like China helped in that situation. But a advisor told Axios, there's no way we can be ready economically. The chip supply chain won't be anywhere close to self-sufficiency for CEOs and really the economy as a whole. There's no more of a pressing issue than the supply chain for chips. A Trump advisor told Axios Xi is trying to move China to a new position where he's saying, we're not a rising power, where you're equal, and Taiwan is mine. The trip signaled a much higher likelihood that Taiwan will be on the table in the next 5 years. So the entire trip with China seemed like it was the CCP trying to get Trump to come so that they could talk about Taiwan versus Iran. And, we don't know if we made any progress. These new reports that we're getting in the pre-market potentially signaling we have made some decent progress with Iran, as the Pakistani mediators are now reviewing the different options that have been put on the table. But until Trump officially says, hey, we got a deal, we just don't know if that's happening yet. So time will tell how this ends up playing out, and we'll try to cover it this entire week. Again, Nvidia on Wednesday, that's going to be a big one and probably determine the trajectory of where this market goes, at least from the semiconductor rally as well. ASTS up 5% pre-market, Rocket Lab up 7% pre-market. Microsoft continuing to get hit in the gutter. Again, Bill Gates sold the entire 7.6 million share position in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. UNH also down about 2%. HIMSS down 5% on a $330 million convertible note they issued today. T1 Energy up 17% after Leopold's new acquisition. Nvidia up 2%. SanDisk and Micron continue to be up 4%, 1437 on SanDisk. Micron's also up 4.5%. And then AMD up 1.39%. All right, folks. I hope everyone had a good weekend. We've got 2 more weeks left in May, and then we enter June. 6 months into the year. Kind of crazy how fast everything is moving. But nonetheless, we're all here. And we'll be covering the entire market every single day. And in order to cover the market, there's one thing that we got to do every single day. Every day, Monday through Friday, we got to do it. It's Monday, May 18th. The stock market is now open. Daniel Glasser says, do it. It is your destiny. That's the best thing ever. It literally was my destiny to ring this bell every day, 9:30 in the morning. Wake your asses up. Let's get into it. S&P 500, 739.50. That was super green pre-market, and now it is barely green. We were up like 30 cents. It was up almost $3. We'll see if that one ends up flipping red. ASTS, $88. That's up 5.23%. That is being Rocket Lab. Wow. 136. That is up 9%. Redwire, that's up 10% again. SpaceX IPO'd last night in the perpetual futures market. The valuation is implying a $2.4 trillion market cap. It is not officially IPO'd yet on the NASDAQ, but if that ends up matching the IPO in a couple of weeks on the NASDAQ, I mean, maybe these space stocks are just going to keep going up with it. 137 on Rocket Lab. ServiceNow actually opens up 4%. which is nice to see given it was up 7% last night. CoreWeave, that's down 3%. HIMS is down 6%. UNH down 1%. Berkshire sold all their HIMS. Microsoft, that's down about 0.5%. T1 Energy up 16. Nvidia, 229 you've got on Nvidia. Intel 114, that's up 5. Again, Leopold did buy more Intel in his 13F as well. Micron almost 750, that's at 749.53. Cerebras is up 3%. That was down 7% on Friday. Dominion Energy, Next Era, wants to buy them for 74 or I think it was 74 billion, I think if I'm right. Yeah, around 74 billion. Don't know if the regulators will let that go through, but Dominion Energy, that's up 10%. That would be one of the biggest energy acquisitions we've seen all year. Uber, that's down 0.5%. Zeta, that's up 3.5. AppLovin, that's down. Google, that's down. Amazon, that is down. Oracle, that's down as well. Rigetti, D-Wave, all the quantum stocks are down. Ethereum's up a little bit. Shopify at $100. Thrive Capital has a new $100 million position. That is red. Tesla also red by about 1%. Some of the software names are flipping. Adobe's green. Salesforce is green. ServiceNow is green. The space stocks, I think, are the story of this morning. I think they're the story of the morning. Rocklab 137. ASTS almost 90. Almost 90. Lunar 3783. That's up 11.3%. S&P 500 barely green. The semi's not really helping here. SanDisk kind of falling off a cliff. It was at 1450, and now you're starting to see it potentially go red. DRAM, though, that's up 3.3%. IRDM, yep, that's another space play from satellite communications. That's up 4.9% as that continues to go green. Hive, this was another position. Bitcoin miner, 33%, disclosed in the Leopold 13F. That T1 Energy and Keel. Is Keel up today? Keel is down. So interesting. So Keel was a new one that he bought. That's down. Hive is a new one that he bought. That's up 30%. And then the other names are relatively flat to somewhat green. Microsoft trying to recover, but that's still down. Where's Robinhood? That is just flipping green, 77.14. BlackBerry, is that green? BlackBerry is red. MicroStrategy bought $2 billion of Bitcoin in the past week. $2 billion of Bitcoin in the past week. They bought it at an average price of $80,000. They now have 840,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And they raised the $2 billion via ATMs over the past week. But obviously, even with those buys, because Bitcoin's down, MicroStrategy is down right now. Wow, Zeta getting a nice little move right here. $18. There's no headline on Zeta. This is, I think, the street just being a little bit more optimistic about the software names today. But the semi names are not necessarily red. Micron's at 755. So maybe you're seeing a little bit of participation across the entire sectors. Oracle, that's down 2.37%. AMD, which was almost below 400 last night, 437. What a rebound on that, dude. That was pushing 405 last night. Look at that, 438. That goes green. Nubank, that's also up a little bit. Howard Marks also sold all of his Nubank. So some of these international stocks just not getting a lot of love. Qualcomm, 208, that's up 3.3. Nokia, 2.9. The Nokia deep dive will be out today on Substack. I was editing it in the morning, probably by market close. It'll be out. So for those that are interested in reading the full deep dive on that, that'll be out by market close today. And I think there's a thesis. I think there is a thesis. I think if the semis top, Nokia is going to probably get cut in half. But that's also the same with pretty much any of the semi stocks you're bullish on right now. If we do have a top, even if it's short term, they're all good. But obviously, I think most of us believe that will be a buying opportunity for all of them. If the macro has a short-term top, which is inevitable, sometimes that happens. Having said that, I think there is a deeper thesis there, and it's contingent on their 6G AI RAN story. But you'll be able to read more about that in the deep dive, and then we'll talk more about that after. Bloom right there, 273. That is red. Reddit is also red as well, as that continues to go down. Oh, so what's his name? Leopold sold out of Lumentum. That's probably why that thing's taking a hit right here. It was already going down on Friday, but he sold the entirety of Lumentum. And I mean, the guy's probably up like 3x on it. So it's not that crazy to see him sell, but the valuation there is also a little aggressive. SanDisk just went red. SPY just went red. Okay, so that's a reversal from the pre-market. Pre-market, we were pretty damn green. That ended up flipping on the indices. UNH still red. Microsoft still red. Hood actually going a bit more green. HIMS, obviously, with dilution. Wow, 8% down. This one fell like badly in the pre-market, but then it started recovering, and it was almost like the market didn't care that much about the dilution. And well, looks like they do care. Hims right there, 2303. I'm also confused. Why are they diluting? Like, don't they have money? You know, like the stock is down so much. They're free cash flow positive. They already did a couple of convertible notes a few months ago. So it was a bit surprising for them to issue another 300 million of convertible notes, but you know, growth is not that substantial, and then you're diluting. Obviously, the stock market's not going to love it too much. Micron, 755 to 743. That just went down. Google, did we flip green? Google back to 400. This one's been toying with 400 for the past couple of weeks now. Hasn't really been able to establish a base above it, but still green. CoreWeave, I guess Leopold also sold a decent chunk of CoreWeave today, even though he added some calls. So maybe that's why the street's upset about it. Or it's maybe the Wall Street Journal article that gave Nebius the bid over CoreWeave. Nebius also down today, 5%, 209, as that one is going red. Zeta is up because private funds disclosed buying in their 13Fs. I have not seen many of Zeta's 13Fs get disclosed yet. We're still getting a lot over this week. So we'll try to see how many of them have established a position. But you know, it wouldn't be that surprising to me as well. As companies going 50%, trades at 2x sales, you would imagine at some point, some parts of the market are going to get interested. Zeta right there up 4.8%. Robin at 77.18. Iridium, that's up 7. Rock Lab, are we still 135? We are 137 on the lab of rockets. Sats is also up 6.5% as well. There you go. 146.62. Okay, so is BMNR getting hit? BMNR is getting hit. Well, so they said today they have now 4.37% of the Ethereum float. Obviously, ETH is just had a couple bad red candles, which is bad for BMNR, and obviously Bitcoin took a hit over the weekend. Wow, Bitcoin taking a hit right now. It was just at 77.5. Is literally just at 77.5 like 15 minutes ago. 76.8. So there you go. That's $1,000 candle on Bitcoin. Surprising. Hood is actually green on this. Coinbase down about 4% as well, as that continues to go red. ServiceNow, that is at 3.8.2%. Nebius, that continues to fall. All right, so your AI names are definitely taking a hit in the first 10 minutes of the day. Some, even Nvidia 230 to 226. There you go. Poet was up 12%. Now it's up 3%. Intel, you got some red candles coming in. Let's see if these get bought or if these are going to be just more momentum to the downside. Amcor as well. Wow, Amcor losing 70. Amcor didn't lose 70 for the past 3 weeks. You know, it felt kind of fishy last night with the futures. Now, obviously, this could just be algos and this could reverse really quickly. But last night, nothing really changed from last night to this morning, unless these Iran headlines are real. But oil hasn't substantially gone down, and the 10-year hasn't substantially gone down enough to believe that Iran officially has opened the Strait of Hormuz and the U.S. has a deal with them until Trump announces it. I don't know how much the market is going to believe it. Having said that, if he does announce it in the coming days and we end up going red for the next few days, maybe those are great dip buys if we have a deal coming up. But obviously the market is still confused about that. ServiceNow holding on to its 5% move from last night. Holding on to its 5% move from last night. And you're seeing a little bit more momentum right there. Rock Lab 133, that's up 6.4. Google, is Google making a pump? Wow. It's weird, right? Some of these names, you think they would be high beta drawdowns, especially in big tech, but they're going the opposite. Microsoft, Tesla, and Meta, I think all red. Yep, Meta, wow, another $5 before it gets below 600. This stock cannot get any love this year. Amazon, 265, that's trying to go green. Google, on the other hand, new 52-week high. Well, actually, no, 404. No, we hit 404 today, just now. 404 is the new 52-week high. Yeah, you could say the SpaceX stake that Google has is helping it pump. That's fair. I mean, if SpaceX goes to 3 trillion, for example, Google's 120 billion, I think turns into like 180 billion. So, you know, there is a world in which the street prices that in. Rocket Lab taking a pretty ugly fall from 138 to 131. Again, still above 130, which is nice, but that immediate knee-jerk reaction so far has been red. Google is at all-time highs at the moment. AMD 431, that's up 1.7. You got Robinhood 77.50. Ondas, they acquired a new company today. Down 5%. They've also engaged in a ton of dilution and acquisitions, but that's kind of the core business model of Ondas. That stock though down 4.3%. 30 and a wake up says buy the Rocket Lab dip. Yeah, 138 to 130. That is your dip. Do you think Corning's a buy at this level? I think Corning's got to give us a more attractive opportunity, and that's really, the real buy on Corning, like the heavy buy, is 160, because that's when Nvidia announced the partnership. 180 and below, I think, is a bit more interesting. But here's the thing, like Nebius, it was at 230 last week. Now it's at 203. Is Nebius interesting to anyone at 203 from 230? I don't think so, right? I think Nebius is a lot more interesting if it gets back at least 165, 170 here. Now, that might not happen. But then again, it went up really quick, which means it could go down really quick as well, right? Like CoreWeave was at 135 last week. It's at 101 right now. So a lot of these names, Micron was at 755 in the morning. It was at 765 in the pre-market, back down to 733. A lot of these names, we spent some time talking about it last week. They're going to move together at this point. And whether or not they deserve to go up or down, they will go with each other. SanDisk officially going red, S&P officially going red as well. And that's going to present a lot better opportunities, if you don't want to buy the dip in the moment. And here's the thing. If NVIDIA's earnings go bad, meaning the stock goes down, I think the earnings will be fantastic. I really can't see a scenario where the actual numbers are bad, just given all the momentum we've seen with all these other semiconductor stocks and their earnings. But if the stock tanks, I can't imagine the semiconductor names are going to be green, which, maybe the market's like, hey, and, at the end of the day, we can't make NVIDIA a $7.5 trillion company yet. We'll take it back to $5 trillion. Right now it's at $5.6 trillion. So we'll take away $600 billion market cap, let it consolidate, and wait till we make the next move up. Having said that, NVIDIA's also NVIDIA, and they're at the center of everything, and they're growing at the level they're growing at. Their multiple's not crazy. If they reiterate and accelerate guidance again, the multiple only gets cheaper. So I wonder how long dips really last if we do get them. Apple below 300 again at the moment. Oracle with the data center plays getting hit down 4%. Again, Howard Marks sold Grab. Renaissance Technologies bought Grab. At this point, whether it's Grab, whether it's SoFi, whether it's a random name that is not moving for you this year, I will say the same thing I say every day. You either cry about it and get out the position and go into something else, or you hold on to it and hope your day will come. Like at this point, it's we were seeing how the market's reacting to this stuff. SoFi, Grab, all these names, Hood, they've all been opportunity costs. Massive. Microsoft, Meta, they've all been opportunity costs. So you either say, enough with the opportunity costs, get out the position and go into something else, or you hold on and say eventually the opportunity cost will not be an opportunity cost. But that comes down to conviction. I do think the Renaissance buy is interesting, because when they initiate a position, they tend to DCA pretty heavily and build it into something substantial. But, that's not a reason to buy or sell it. It's more so just a question of, where's your conviction? Poet goes red, down 4%. Down 4%. Why is Nebius down? I don't think it's anything Nebius specific. It's all the data center plays. Wow. 9%, those little ugly. But is it that ugly? It was up 20% last week in a day. So I don't know if 9% down is as ugly as it initially looks. Rocket Lab losing 130. That's a little uglier. It was just that almost 139. Now at 127. Meta 608 right here. HIMS, are we down? HIMS is down 9% below 23. Southeastern markets are hurting because of oil. That is fair. But again, Grab's Q1 was exceptional. And so was C Limited's. Did anyone see C Limited's numbers? We talked about it on Wednesday, but they just destroyed the earnings. 50% revenue growth. Grab in their Q1, which is supposed to be their worst quarter, even with the Indonesian oil subsidy and all that stuff that went bad, they grew EBITDA 50%, and they grew revenue 25%. So to me, even with the oil crisis, exceptional companies, and because of regional consolidation, have continued to do well. But they're not going to get a bid from the street when Micron and SanDisk are going to the moon, right? And so it's one of those things where I think it's more of a liquidity issue versus a fundamental issue on the companies. As long as the companies are fundamentally executing, yeah, it's an opportunity cost, but it's not an opportunity cost where I'm like, I'm in a scam company. That's a different type of feel when your company's not executing and you think, it's a little shady, if the stock's just not moving, but the company's executing, at that point, there's just not much you can do other than wait. MicroStrategy right there down 7. Lumentum's about to go below 900, which looks ugly. RXT, Rackspace, that's down 13 again. This was up like 50 in the past week. So not crazy to see that one end up going a bit red. Vertiv down 7 as well. Okay, so the semiconductor sell-off from last night is officially entering into the market open today. It teased us in the pre-markets of everything flipping green. And unless we flip green again, it looks like this sell-off might continue. Micron, however, has not officially gone red. It's close, but not officially gone red. Is Cerebras competitive to SanDisk? No, not exactly. Cerebras does inference with chips. SanDisk is a memory play. However, Cerebras chips theoretically don't need as much memory. That's one of the things about why their inference has become as fast as it has. So it's not competitive with SanDisk. They're not a competitor to SanDisk, but there is a world in which their innovation leads to issues for all the memory names in general. By the way, speaking of memory, the Samsung senior executive in South Korea, he had a quote this morning, which I thought was, I can't believe he said it, but he did say it. And it's something that, at least given Samsung is, one of the biggest memory names out there, I think people need to pay attention to. He said, Chinese players are aggressively expanding production capacity, adding that as memory supply surges, the market could start in the second half of next year seeing prices come down for memory. And so if that does happen, meaning in the second, and let's say we still need a lot of memory, that thesis is not going down. But if in the, and this is from the talk he gave at the National Academy of Engineering of Korea on May 18th, which for them was yesterday. If we do have memory supply surge and gross margins inevitably have to come down for all these memory players, because obviously, the prices they charge are going to have to come down. It's one thing to think about. It's one thing to think about in terms of, what implications does that have on memory in general, and if that ends up being a shock, because the analysts are assuming by 2028, the earnings projections go down for all those companies. Now, if you are buying the memory stocks at these levels, you're disagreeing with the analysts. If you're staying away, then you might be a little bit more hesitant to believe that it massively goes green. ServiceNow is at 100. Look at that. And Zeta up 7%. So some of these software names pushing a little bit more love right here, or getting some more love, which is green. Senior Iranian source to Reuters: Washington has so far only agreed to unfreeze 25% of Iran's funds on a phased timetable. Tehran has demanded U.S. to release all funds. U.S. has shown flexibility in ongoing discussions, including over limits to Iran's nuclear work. Tehran will discuss its nuclear issue in later stages. Okay, so the Iranians basically saying that as Micron goes red, the U.S. is only going to unfreeze 25% of our assets, which is different from the initial headline we had in the morning about getting rid of all sanctions. So that's not necessarily true, at least from the Iranians yet. And Tehran is demanding to release all of these funds. Okay, we're going to have to see what ends up happening. Nebius right there, 202 down 8%. But it feels like we're a little bit closer to a deal than not, if they're even having discussions of getting rid of or unfreezing some of these assets. Rocket Lab right there, 128.09. The Samsung guy was just an advisor. Yeah, and look, he might have his own political agenda for saying what he said about memory prices writ large, but at the end of the day, I think the memory thesis is purely contingent on, do you think the pricing power will exist 2 years from now? Because, if you're buying it at $900 billion market cap, you have to believe that's going to exist, which means you really have to, quite frankly, be an expert on where you think memory prices are going to go in this cycle over the next coming years. Because if there's a hint of that just getting hit, I think the market's going to be pretty ruthless about it. Just like the market's pretty ruthless about Nvidia. They think that CapEx is slowing down, and the acceleration of people buying GPUs will be slowing down, or even CPUs. AMD, Intel, Nvidia, they're all immediately going to get re-rated. And so far that's not happening, which is a good thing. And, there's more compute than we can, or there's more demand for compute than we can imagine. But that is the overarching bear case on the semiconductor rally in general. Tesla 414, that's down 1.9%. That one also continuing to go red. Today's just a gap fill day. It might be. It might just be a gap fill day. This is, however, the third red day. If we do end up red for today, Thursday, Friday, and Monday. So far, it's early in Monday, but all these names were hit pretty hard on Friday and after hours. They got hit even worse. So if this continues towards the end of the day, now granted, Palantir is about to flip green, so you're seeing some of the software names go green. Granted, this happens every time going into Nvidia. Like every time going into Nvidia earnings, everything dumps, and then Nvidia crushes it. And unfortunately, last time everything dumped again, but we were kind of heading into a war, so I get why. Maybe this time, if Nvidia crushes, everything reverses off the dump like it did back in 2024 when Nvidia just kept crushing and the dumps would get bought up so quickly. So it's kind of tough with Nvidia earnings to say that these dumps are necessarily real because a lot of it is just jitters going into the print. Microsoft also about to flip green as well. SoFi is up about 2%. So you're seeing some of the rotation from semis into fintech with SoFi and software with ServiceNow, and Salesforce was up 1.2%. And Google, 404.60, a new all-time high for Google on the day. Is Affirm up and PayPal? Affirm is down. PayPal is up. So PayPal and SoFi getting a bit more green. Intuit is also a little green. Not every software name is green, but enough are green to make you think that some of the semis are being sold off for software. ServiceNow, look at that go. What a champ, 6.1%. I mean, look, this bottomed at 82. So you're up about 18% if you got anywhere near that range. ServiceNow makes a move above 100. Take-Two shares are down after reported internal retailer emails suggesting Best Buy may be wrong about GTA 6 pre-orders. Take-Two down about 0.24%. SpaceX is not green yet. It is not, I mean, it's not live yet in the public NASDAQ or American markets, but it is live in the crypto derivative markets. And, the valuation right there is really implying $2.5 trillion, which is why I think the space names are up today. Google, 404.80, SoFi, 15.96. Nvidia just flipped green as well. SpaceX likely will be live on June 12th. That's when they're estimating for the IPO, which is going to be pretty exciting, dude. I mean, regardless of what you feel about the valuation, it's going to be pretty exciting to see a company like that go public and have all that hard work that Elon put in get rewarded. It's just, sometimes you got to separate how you feel about Elon and the company and the inspiring part of it versus the freaking valuation, and where that's going to go. This was Elon this morning at a conference saying the SpaceX IPO is coming soon.
I would be there in person, but this is IPO. We've got to get the IPO, SpaceX IPO going pretty soon, I think. But I look forward to visiting Israel again.
Elon, I think, officially becomes a trillionaire when it goes to 2 trillion. He's at like 890 billion right now. Lumentum below 900, down 7. So he will be the world's first trillionaire. Poet down 5 after hitting 25. After hitting 25 on Friday. Google 405, Nvidia 225. Is BlackBerry moving? BlackBerry getting a little bit of a move. There you go, 4%. Nokia, that just flipped red. Do you think SpaceX is overvalued? Yes, I do. Having said that, doesn't really matter what I think. If the market's ready to pay that much for it, then the market is going to pay that much for it. Wow, look at ServiceNow, 102. 102, helping out Zeta, helping out Salesforce, helping out Palantir. Zeta, 9%. There's no headline, folks. I promise you there's no headline on Zeta. And that is why sometimes you just got to stomach the volatility when your stock goes down, because randomly it can reverse off no headline, off just the sheer nature of the market's attitude shifting. For whatever reason, it's shifting. And the same thing is literally happening with ServiceNow. There's no headline to get ServiceNow to pump. Gold just went up 1%. Silver up 3% as well. That is green. Semi's still kind of getting hit though. Semi's still getting hit. SMH 555. That is also still red. Yeah, Benioff on the Olin pod I thought was interesting. He did not make a compelling pitch for why Salesforce was attractive. To be honest, I thought Chamath's analysis of what's going to happen with software was actually better than Benioff's. And it's funny because last week, I'm pretty sure Chamath said software was dead. Like, I'm pretty sure. And this week, he's like, well, it's probably not as dead as we think. And so, you can assume Chamath is similar to any other type of investor, retail or institutional. Like, their attitude can shift so quickly, and then the market's defense can shift so quickly.
Safe space. I think the high end of the market where Mark operates, where the large monoliths operate, is quite safe. And the tell was this week. The deployment company deal basically shows you what OpenAI is running into. So, you have to put in $4 billion. You get all of these folks. You gave them a 17.5% preferred guaranteed return. For what? Essentially to stand up a competitor to Ernst & Young, Anderson, Deloitte, PwC, Cognizant, etc. If you just look at that doesn't actually mathematically make that much sense if you look at what those companies are actually trading at. But why is OpenAI doing this? I think why is because at the high end of the market, where all the action is, what people are finding is, hey, hold on a second, this is a lot harder than we thought. It's not like boop, 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 put in a prompt and beep, bap, boop, it all works. It's not how it works. And so I think
Good point.
I think we're a little oversold. And I think this consolidation and the re-rating can happen in the opposite direction. So what is the opposite trade? The opposite trade is who has constructive net dollar retention, who has negative churn that's been really predictable, which is a way of saying who has the best relationships. Meaning they're in.
Basically, the TLDR is he thinks that a legacy software company that has all your data is not going out of business anytime soon because it has all your data, which is pretty much what everyone has been saying, at least if you've been calling BS on this whole, software is dead narrative for the past, at this point, 3 months. And so you're starting to see people flip their tone, which is good. And maybe, the stock prices will reflect it. Micron goes red. So Micron, red, ServiceNow, green. That happened last night, flipped in the pre-market. Once again, it's happening again. ServiceNow up 7%, Micron down. Nebius also down 8%, Oracle down 3%, Corning down 4%, Meta flat, and then Amazon slightly green on the day. It's not dead. It's just being re-rated. But yeah, so agreed. It's just, I think people have realized the re-rating has happened to such a dismissive extent where these companies are trading less than 10 times free cash flow that it's getting a little stupid, right? And now, granted, they're going to have to put up good earnings. Like Salesforce, I still don't have a lot of faith that they're going to crush earnings because in the past 2 years, they haven't really crushed earnings. But the stock is so oversold that I feel like the bar is so low for this thing to get back up to 220, 230. And so we should be getting their earnings soon and seeing what ends up happening. Oscar, this stock has been great over the past couple of weeks. Look at that, $25. Hit a new 52-week high right here, 25.15, 7.85%. They absolutely destroyed their earnings. And the CMS rates or the ACA subsidies had no impact on them. CEO also bought $12 million of his stock. Palo Alto CEO, do you guys remember the day he bought $10 million of his stock back at like 150 in March? Goodbye, 243 today. So you got some of these CEOs just calling absolute BS on their stock prices getting hit as hard as they're getting hit. And the market is rewarding it. Figma, they crushed earnings as well, 22.86. That's down 0.5%, but that was up from 16, which was also another software name that got rewarded. I don't know why Hood is up today. It should be down with Bitcoin. So maybe the street knows something about Hood that we don't know about yet, but that one is flipping green, 2.8%. S&P is not even that green either, so I'm not sure what it's being tracked with, but it is up. Nebius almost below 200. Rocket Lab 138 to 126, so that one gave back a lot of its gains. SMH as well just flipped red, down about 1.2%. BJ Cal, thanks for the super chat. Admit, should I sell Rocket Lab here and re-enter later? It really depends on how much you believe in holding Rocket Lab at this valuation. Look, I think at the end of the day, the SpaceX IPO can be a very big event. And I think Rocket Lab's made the move. Like if I thought when it was 70, 65 bucks that it would make a move because of the SpaceX IPO, my wildest imagination was like maybe 110, like maybe even 100. Like I was still doubting, could we get above 100? It's made the move at this point. So if that was the reason you bought it, then yeah, profits are probably necessary here. But could this thing get crazier if SpaceX pumps hard? Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be buying Rocket Lab at 125. Like personally, I'm just not after buying it at 70 in March. Would I be buying it at 125? But taking profits is a different question. Nvidia 224.80. That goes red again. AEHR Photonics Play down 15. I don't think there's a headline on that. It feels like there should be if it's down that much. Could it be dilution? But that's down 15. Again, it's down with a lot of these names. Here's the other thing. AEHR is up like 4x this year, right? Micron up a lot this year. Micron 715. This is where I think conviction is tested. This is where conviction is really tested. How many people who bought Micron recently are going to buy it again? How many people who bought AEHR recently are going to, how many people who just bought Nebius, because there were, I mean, the stock got to 230. There was definitely someone buying it in that range. How many people are going to, double down on their conviction? Because you can't tell me 230 to 200 isn't a dip. It's absolutely a dip. But like 200 still, up a lot from where it was. There you go. Now below 200 on Nebius. And this is where we start to see, were people just chasing, or were people full of shit? Or do people actually want to deploy capital in a meaningful way? And it's time to find out how excited people actually were to buy some of these names when they were going straight green. AMD right there, 419. As that one is down below 420. My cost is well below the current Micron price. Not sure why I would buy more. Yeah, I mean, look, if you bought the dip, the same thing with Rocket Lab with me, right? Or Oracle. If you bought these in March and April, I can't stump. Or Nvidia, I'm not buying it at 220. No way in hell. Like no way in hell am I buying this thing at 224. Not after it was stuck at 160, 180 for the majority of the year. This is part of the reason I haven't bought Micron. It's like, okay, look, I missed it. It's okay to say you missed something. I'm not buying it after it was at 300, what feels like less than a month ago. But if it gets to 300 again, I'll be more interesting. I don't think it's going to actually get to 300. But if it gets to 500, and you bought it at 800, if you're not buying that dip, why the hell did you buy it at 800, right? Corning, if that thing dips, I will be excited to buy that again. Like take us back to 160. I will be so excited to double down on this position because there is a real thesis here around fiber optics. And I think the valuation is very attractive at those levels. But I actually want that to happen to double down. I don't know how many people want some of these names that they recently bought. Like if you bought Poet at 23, do you really want it to go back to 7 to double down as Poet goes below 15? We got to see. What if you bought your whole position in 250 to 300? Why would you add more? You wouldn't. I agree. If you bought Micron at 250 to 300, there is no reason to be buying it here. My comment is toward the people that have been chasing it in the past week. And it's not just Micron, right? Forget Micron. Just any stock that has been parabolic. If you bought Micron at 300, there's no reason for you to be buying it on the dip from 800 to 700. But if you bought it at 770 and you're not buying it at 715, or if it goes down to the low 700s, then why did you buy it at 750, right? Like I think that's the broader question. And if it was because of FOMO, then obviously that's not really the best reason at the end of the day. But I think we're going to get a lot more answers to see how people are thinking of this stuff. Bitcoin, 76,872. That one's still down below 70,000. Rocket Lab is $195 covered calls. My goodness. How much premium are people paying for this stuff? Goodness. By the way, for all the people that got excited about that ETF with robots, please be careful. It's down 25%. The NAV, I was looking at it over the weekend, is $7.50. The NAV is $7.50. Let me say that again. The net asset value of this ETF that is being touted as the best way to get exposure to robotics is $7.50. It was trading at $40 on Friday. MicroStrategy and Bitmine at the highest of peak euphoria in crypto got a 2x NAV, 2x MNAV, I should say. On Friday, this thing was getting a 570% premium, 5.7x MNAV. Today, it is still getting a 360% premium. I'm pretty bullish on humanoid robotics, but I'm not paying 3.6x the market cap of the companies that they hold for what? To say that I have exposure? Like, no, like I'm not doing that. So, this is part of the euphoria in parts of the market where you got to be a little concerned about what exactly is happening there. What is net asset? What is NAV? NAV is just net asset value. So the company has $150 million of stock in Apptronic, Figure, and then like a bunch of other these robotics plays. If you equivocate that to the number of shares that are outstanding, that equals $7.50. People are buying this thing at $27.19, which is fine. I don't know why, but if you've got a reason, that's fine. It's just you're paying a hell of a premium towards that NAV, and that needs to be thought about. On top of that, they can dump $2 billion of shares on you because they filed a $2 billion ATM on Friday, just like Iran has the $6 billion ATM, which they've used, I think, about $2 billion of it already. So it could be them themselves dumping some stock this morning, which is why the thing is down 24%. So this is just stuff people have to be a little bit careful of. And, when people get so excited about getting exposure to the hottest robotics company, it's like, okay, but how are you getting that exposure? And usually there's a catch to how you get that exposure, especially if it's not public yet. And that comes in the price of paying a pretty aggressive premium. ServiceNow 103, baby, 9%. 9%. As that is green. Admit you're using equivocate wrong. I am probably using that word wrong, but it sounds like I'm using it right, which is all that matters, to be honest. That's all that matters. Wow, I'm using it so wrong. Equivocate means to use vague, ambiguous, or intentionally misleading language to conceal the truth. I'm using it as a synonym for equals. I am using it so wrong, but from here on out, every time you hear me say equivocate, just know that a misinterpretation of equivocate means equal, not intentionally misleading language to conceal the truth, because that's actually a full 180 from what I'm actually trying to get it to mean. But on this show, we speak omit language, not English here. Google 40619. As that continues to go green, you're looking for equate. Yeah, but equivocate sounds cooler than equate. Like, equivocate just sounds like a dope word. Equate is like kind of boring, Representative Dwight Evans just sold American Tower, Intel, Quanta Services, and Thermo Fisher. So you've got 4 sells from some of our politicians. Trump did 3,700 trades in the months of February and March. We talked about the disclosures with the White House Committee of Ethics last week. It's pretty incredible, a sitting president trading as much as he is, but he definitely bought the dip in March. He definitely bought the dip in March, and he sold the rip in February before buying the dip in March. Is Pounter getting a move? Pounter is getting a move. Your software names going a little green. Going a little green. I bet Trump is on hood. It would be hilarious if Trump presses his Diet Coke button in the Oval Office and pulls up Robinhood, then has the market open in the background, Like, what are you going to do if he's watching the market open, if you're his advisors? Like, you can't stop him from doing that. He's the president. He can do whatever he wants. Like, he can tell you to get the hell out of the Oval Office and just chill out and watch the market open for a couple hours and, then get back to work. 205 on Nebius, little bounce. Little bounce from 200. Any reason for AAOI to be down 10% today? I don't think so. They already, 170. This thing was at 230 last week. Yeah, I don't think there's a reason for any of these names to be down. There's not a reason for Micron to be down. Is Micron a worse company than what it was last week? It's just they all went up so quickly, and we're seeing those levels get tested. But even if AAOI settles down at 170, 150, it was at $20 in January, So 230 probably just got extended. I don't think they diluted or anything today. They already filed for dilution 3 weeks ago. Is there a reason for MicroStrategy to be down? Yes, Bitcoin's down. That's your simple reason for why MicroStrategy is down. Shub says I sold Nebius for DRAM. Interesting. Nebius 204 DRAM at 51 right here. DRAM trying to flip green on the day. I mean, look, whether it's Nebius, Micron, DRAM, they're all in the same bucket at the end of the day. Like, they really are. They're all in the data center ecosystem play. Now, some of them are going to outperform others and be worse than others, but I think if they're all up, they're all up. If they're all down, they're all down. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing today. And as a continuation from Friday, Google, it just keeps going. I think this is from Berkshire. Obviously, Berkshire bought a lot, and the market is probably happy about that. Bill Ackman sold his shares, 407 on the Googs. I mean, a Berkshire endorsement is pretty freaking special for any stock. So it makes sense that Google's getting some more love. Is there news on Poet? I don't think there is. We talked about it last night. Again, there was some reporting that people went to their headquarters and, you know, in Toronto and no one was even there. And again, I looked at the $50 million revenues. It's a conditional revenue framework. It's not even real revenue. It's like if Poet accomplishes XYZ things, they might get some of the money. So whatever fake revenue they announce, and the reason I'm saying fake is because it's literally not real. Like, they can't count the revenue. It's like a weird version of remaining performance obligations, which is not revenue. RPO is not revenue. So whatever got it to pump to 25 felt like a pump, like a legit pump from the C-suite. And obviously the stock is down pretty heavily from 25 now to 14, but it's up from 7. So obviously dip buyers have been rewarded from buying it at those levels. Bot is down 22%, $28. Micron 720, Corning 183, Nvidia 225. The Poet $400 million investment was news from Friday. That's already been talked about. That $400 million investment also isn't even a real investment. It's warrants. So whatever investor is investing in them, whatever institutional investor they got at $21, they have warrants, which means, you know, essentially they can exercise and create more dilution for Poet. So like the whole raise felt icky, and then the whole conditional revenue they got felt like it wasn't even real revenue. If you just read through the SEC filings on the fine print on the revenue, it doesn't make a lot of sense, which is why I think the stock's down from 25. But it's a volatile name, dude, and the South Koreans are in it heavy. So could this thing pump up to 25 again for whatever reason? Yeah, it could. I mean, there's just a lot of excitement in the name. ASTS 8690, that's up 4%. SPY 740, so SPY flipping a big green as that's getting some more love. Adobe as well getting some love. Credo, this one is ran like crazy. Credo down 7% today. Again, I don't think there's any reason for that other than it's ran like crazy. So you're seeing a little bit more love right there. Amit, did you get the new Swatch? Dude, what is this Swatch thing that's going viral? Like what? Like Swatch and Audemars Piguet Royal Pop collab. I've been seeing pictures of this stuff. I'm like, why are people going so crazy over these watches? Like, who freaking cares? Like, I don't get it. I really don't get why people are freaking out about this. Yeah, look at this stuff, dude. People are freaking crowding into stores for this shit. Also, is this public? Can we play this somehow? Is there a way to play this? AP and Swatch. 100-person line for Swatch stores in London, Zurich, New York, Singapore. Like, is there really a way to play this? Because I've been seeing it all weekend and I have no idea why people are going crazy for this. Like, why does it matter so much? What is it? Why is it such a big deal? Iran's news agency cites source close to negotiating team. Iran says U.S. demand still excessive despite draft changes. Despite draft changes. It's an AP collab. Okay, but like, is AP that big of a deal? Like, are they that special? Audemars Piguet. And how much are these Swatch collabs? Like, how much are these watches? Like, how are regular people lining up to buy this stuff? Like, aren't these supposed to be super expensive? MicroStrategy below 170. Yes, they're special. They're special. It's buying an AP for $400. why don't people just go to Temu and get the fake version? I don't get why people are so like, it looks exactly the same. If it's just about like showing off the watch, like just get the fake version of it. Like this is so much energy to get a watch. US and Israeli officials are making their most intensive military preparations since the ceasefire, amid fears that attacks on Iran could resume as early as this week, as per the New York Times. All right, so you got Iran saying, we think we're close to a deal. And then you got Israel saying, we are getting ready to make more military preparations. Like no one exactly knows, once again, if we're getting close to resolving this situation, which is why oil is still above 100. You're trying to rage bait? I'm not trying to rage bait. I don't get why I'm not staying in a line for a Artemars Piguet Swatch collaboration. Like, I've got better things to do. Like, it's like, I don't know. I've never been this obsessed with a consumer product. Look at this. People, look, this is Singapore. People are waiting at 3 a.m. for this store to open. This is ridiculous, dude. Come on. What are we doing? You're saying it wrong? Of course I'm saying it wrong. I mean, Audemars Piguet. How would I ever say that correctly if I can't even say equivocate? Yeah, dude, I'm just so anti-consumerism from that angle. I think it's so, I don't know. Like I look at that stuff and I just like feel bad for humanity. I'm like, this is not something that people should really be spending their time focused on. Then again, you know, I'm not trying to judge. Everyone has their own thing. It's just weird, bro. It's a freaking watch. Coinbase 192. That's down 1.74%. This is really the difference, though, between investors and consumers, right? Investors are like, all right, I'm not going to stay in line for this stupid shit, but I'm going to try to figure out how to play this and make money off of everyone else staying in line. And then you have consumers that are more like kind of brainwashed by a lot of the media of why they need the newest watch or whatever. And, you know, they end up being the ones that actually support all these businesses. PayPal right there, 45.13. That's up 1.63%. You are judging? Okay, maybe I am judging a little bit. I don't know, dude. I've always been so against that level of intensity when it comes to consumerism. But it is what it is. People want to do it, they can do it. Figma 24, that's up 5.3%. Yeah, G-Shock and chill. You can get a G-Shock for $100. Shopify 102, that one flipping green. Shopify back above 100, which is nice. So seeing Shopify and what's the other one? ServiceNow come up as well. Okay, Swatch is public. They're only up 22% this year. I feel like, okay, so this collab, well, actually, no, yeah, they barely dipped this year. Over the past year, they're up 45%. They're OTC, though, so you can't buy it on Robinhood. But Swatch at $12.98 right here. It's got a Rolex collection. Don't let him fool you. I guess people are buying it to resell it too. I mean, yeah, there's that angle. You know, I know a lot of watch people like it because of the resale value. But if you're in that line to resell it, I get it. If you're in that line because you literally just want to wear it because you think it'll make you look cool, that's where I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess. It is what it is. SanDisk down 6% here. That's going down. And Lunar's down 1. Redwire's down 4. Dude, Redwire was up 15 this morning. That one flipped hard. Redwire down 4% right here on the day. 22% is a lot in a watch company. Yeah, but it feels like the hype is so real that like you would think, you know, and in this environment, stocks are going crazy. You would think like it would get a bigger pump than 22%, but that is fair year to date. I mean, it's outperforming Meta. So Meta 611.80 as that's green. Google continuing to just push higher, dude. What is going on with this today? I get Berkshire bought more, but my goodness, 408.06. Honestly, Ackman could have waited. Ackman probably sold this thing at like below 300 if he sold in Q1. Maybe he got 300 in January. He could have waited till now, wait till Berkshire doubled down, sold it at 400, and then bought Microsoft, unless he got the lows on Microsoft at 350, which means, he's up a lot. But if he didn't, if he bought Microsoft at this same price, which is where it was after the first earnings drop on February, then he missed out on a lot of money selling Google pretty early. Obviously, you can't time it perfectly. But by the way, have people realized Ackman has just become a retail investor at this point? His portfolio is Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and Uber. And then you have a little bit of Chipotle, and then you have some Hertz in there. Like, the dude is just beating up Mag 7s when their multiples compress below 20 and then riding them back up to like 30, 35. It's kind of hilarious. I mean, the guy manages $20 billion, and that's his strategy to get returns. Which is, that's what a lot of regular people are doing, which is quite incredible. Rocket Lab still up on the day. That's green. MongoDB, that's moving with your software names. MDB, that is, wow, 7%. Okay, folks, can we say it's a software rotation today? Can we say that? IGV, yep, 1.3. SMH is down probably 1.5. SMH down 1.1. I think we can say it's a software rotation, at least for now. Semis are all red except on semiconductor, which is in 4 cents going to go red. Software is all green except Oracle, which is technically a semiconductor name to an extent, and then Twilio, which is barely red. I think we can say it. It's a rotation. At least for now. Could change pretty quickly. But maybe. You're saying Chipotle wrong. Have you guys ever thought that maybe you're saying it wrong? Like you're speaking of judging, everyone's so quick to judge how I talk and speak. Have you ever for once thought that maybe you're the one who's wrong when it comes to pronunciation? Like, some soul searching is not the worst idea in the world. Here's your heat map. Pretty green except for semis, obviously. Energy's up. Financials, I am still concerned that XLF is doing nothing this year. Like this is the one thing that really freaks me out when I look at financials. And I'm like, why are these guys? We're about to have record IPOs, and this shit is not participating at all. At all. Chad says, except you make a living by speaking. Actually, Chad. Okay? Actually, I make a living by performing. Okay? Not speaking. I'm a performer. And so the emphasis on my speech when this is a performance every morning is, I think, a little unneeded, given my pronunciation should be taken in stride as a performance, not as a proper expression of English. Okay? So that's my interpretation of my career. S&P 740. I was actually talking to my mom about that over the weekend because one of her friend's sons just got into an Ivy League. And I was like, Mom, remember when I got waitlisted from Harvard? And she was like, yeah. I was like, I'm so happy I didn't get in. She was like, why? I was like, because how would I have got to this point in life if I went to Harvard? Like, my life would have been so boring if I went to Harvard. I would not have become a YouTuber. I would not have been interviewing CEOs. I would not have been building a financial media brand. Like, there's no way I would have found myself in this route. I needed to go to a state school, lose at a bunch of different stuff, try a bunch of businesses, fail, take risks, feel like I had a chip on my shoulder. If I went to Harvard, I would be some consultant right now, making a nice 6-figure salary, feeling like I'm on top of the world because I graduated from some elite institution. And she's like, what if your life would have been even better? I'm like, I don't think my life would have been better, dude. Like I really do think the coolest version of my life happened by not going to Harvard. Like, I honestly don't think it would have been that much better. Maybe there would have been more money. Maybe there would have been more prestige or whatever. But like, I think this is way more fun. So now that is cope. as a way of trying to deal with the fact that Harvard rejected me. But still, I think it led to this performative career. S&P 740 as that continues to go great. Why does Google just keep going? Are you guys buying Google today? Oh my goodness, 408. I guess the toots are following Berkshire. Dude, the institutions are so lazy. They just follow each other. All of this buying today, if this is not retail, if this is institutional, they're all just following Buffett today. That's it. And Microsoft, they're all just following Ackman. And Ackman's honestly just following the NASDAQ. Like the only one, quite frankly, that has shown alpha this year is Leopold. And I know people are a little bit too obsessed with him, but he's the only one who's actually like taken some risks and done things differently. Everyone else is just buying the same shit. At least when it comes to the bigger names that are out there. Chas has performative cope. Okay, maybe a little bit of performative cope. Qualcomm, is that dipping? Qualcomm, wow, below 200. This one defended 200 all of last week. There you go. There's your first dip below 200. This was at 130 a month ago. Now it's at 196, so still up a lot. Iran, are we below 50? Oh my goodness, Iran's below 50. Oh my goodness, Nebius is still holding. The fact that Nebius is holding 200 and Iran is below 50 is just embarrassing to Iran, to be honest. It just is. Like, I can't even sugarcoat it. It just is. CoreWeave, almost below 100. Iran's got to get a deal, bro. This shit is getting... this shit is becoming a bloodbath when it comes to the neoclouds. Like, they got to get a freaking deal. APLD, that's also down 7.2. Rare earths are taking a hit today. Okay, so everything in the semis. Wow, USA rare earths down 9%. CRML is down 7.4%. That's ugly. That is ugly. TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat settled ahead of June's landmark social media trial on alleged harms in schools, which centers on claims that addiction to the top platforms has upended learning across America. Meta will still go to trial. Wow, TikTok and Google probably, and Snapchat probably paid a hefty fine to get out of that lawsuit. I kind of like that Zucks is saying, screw it. You guys aren't going to bully us. If you really want to blame Instagram for why kids are not studying in school versus the parents, then sure. We're going to freaking go to trial. I wish Zucks, he's never said this as explicitly. I wish one day, in front of Congress, he just says, Senator, we've got a lot of bad parents in the United States of America. Because to blame my product as the reason for why kids aren't doing well in school is absurd. Now, he can't say that, obviously. He can't do it because there's too much politics attached to it. But obviously, I think he wants to say, are you really blaming Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp for why kids are stupid? Over the failing school system? Over bad parenting? Like, really, that's what you want to blame my app as the reason for it? If I was Zucks, I would say that, but I'm not Zucks, so I can't say that. But he probably can't say that. PayPal, 1.2% as well. Netflix, is that green today? Netflix, almost 90. It's also trying to go green as well. Admit you're not a parent, you wouldn't know. Look, that's fair. I don't think you have to be a parent to be like, hey, like, it's like if you have a kid and they're obsessed with playing video games and you can see that they're becoming an idiot by playing video games all day and not studying for their tests and their scores and putting in the effort, get rid of their video games. You're a parent. Like, throw away the video games. I don't care how much they cry. Like, at some point, you got to put your foot down. My mom put her foot down with me many times when I was younger. So if you think your kid's obsessed with Instagram, okay, you gotta take some actions here as a parent. I mean, you can't blame the 12-year-old kid. So I think that's what Zucks is trying to say. But, obviously there are different perspectives, and he can't say that in front of Congress. Wow, Micron below 710 again. 708 right there. That's down 2%. As that's also getting hit. All right, so Micron continuing with the red that we're seeing from yesterday. CoreWeave 5.6. You don't have to be a parent to have opinions on parenting. We were all kids once. Yeah, that's also true, dude. People are like, you have to be a parent to have opinions on parenting. But, well, you were also a kid. And I also have seen how my parents raised me. And there were a lot of things they did that I don't care what anyone says. You don't have to have a kid to know that, oh, if your parents raised you in a certain way, some things they did were good that I can critique, or I can praise. Some things they did were bad that I can critique. And so, like, yeah, as a parent, I mean, there's some moments where you have to put your foot down. And if we blame Facebook for everything, you know, we got to blame Netflix for everything or YouTube for everything. Like, that's just absurd in a society to blame these media companies for every issue that we have. And the politicians love it because then they don't have to take any responsibility over failing school systems, which are their fault, if we're going to be honest. They can blame the tech companies. And then the tech companies have to take the beating and pay all the fines because of, you know, the political backlash that they get. Nebius right there, 201, as that's down 8% still. Okay, what other macro news do we have today? I don't think we have a ton of it. We're not getting JOLTS this week. We're not getting CPI or PPI. We are not getting jobs data. We already had the non-farm payrolls last week, and they were actually way better than expected. So jobs have been doing okay. Netflix still up right here at 89. CRML getting hit pretty badly. Qualcomm still getting hit pretty badly. Dude, that means the pre-market move was completely fake. The pre-market move was completely fake. Micron was $760 in the pre-market. It's at 707. And it was probably fake because of these Iran headlines that led the market to believe that we're getting some level of retracement. And we're not. Especially because the U.S. hasn't confirmed any of that stuff. Oil was at 103. Oil is at 104.8. Oil's going back up. The 10-year going back up. It touched 700 overnight. Yeah, it definitely touched below those levels last night, or close to those levels last night, but didn't fully break through. Market rates, let's take a look at that. We just got that along with home builder sentiment. That just came in as well.
With Diana Olick. Morning, Diana.
Good morning, Carl. Home builder sentiment in the market for single-family homes rose 3 points in May to 37 on the NAHB Wells Fargo Index. That's a beat. The street was looking for unchanged. Still, anything below 50 is considered negative. The index stood at 34 last May, and that's when mortgage rates were hovering around 7%. Now, we're lower now, but not a lot lower, and rates have been rising in the past week. The NAHB cited rates as well as rising gas prices and economic uncertainty related to the war in Iran, which all continue to dampen buyer demand. Now, of the index's three components, all were higher by 3 points. Current sales conditions to 40, buyer traffic to 25, and future sales expectations rose 3 points to 45. The survey also found fewer builders cutting prices in May, 32% compared with 36% in April. The use of sales incentives was 61% in May. That is up slightly from 60% in April. Sarah, we seem to be seeing a little bit of a late spring surge, according to the builders.
Okay, that's hopeful. Thank you, Diana. Diana Olick. We'll take it. I'll tee off of Diana's talk about mortgage rates, and I think we have to hit global bond yields because there has been this move higher, and it's not just in the U.S., it's in the U.K., it's in Japan, and the moves are a little bit more subdued today, but this continues a move that we have seen over the last few sessions that now has, long bond yields, the 30-year U.S. bond yield, most elevated since 2007. We got the German 30-year at the highest in 15 years. In Japan, the 30-year is its highest ever.
Micron loses 700 for the first time. We'll get back to this bond yield stuff in a second. In a month, is that correct? Last time we were at 698. No, it was May 8th. Sorry. So 10 days. Dude, it feels like Micron's been above 700 for like 10 years. It's been 10 days. Okay, so in 10 days, we went from 698 to 818. And now you're seeing some of that red right there. Nebius, there she goes, down 10. Google, even 408 to 402. So that's algos coming in now. Now, you know, that, I mean, the fact that Google had that big of a move and now it's getting sold off, that's the market getting hit. What about ServiceNow? Even ServiceNow is getting hit. That's market-based algos. That's not even sector-based algos now. Now everything's at the mercy of going red. Grab somehow flipped green in the midst of that. HIMS is down 9. CoreWeave is down 6.4. You're so dramatic. I'm a performer. I have to be dramatic. That's what I do. No, but in all seriousness, like when you're seeing this much red across every sector, that's obviously some of the algos coming in more. Palantir also just flipped red. The robot ETF down 30%. Corning down 5. Let's get Corning to 160, dude. Let's get it to 160. Again, the Nokia Substack will be out today. The CoreWeave Substack will probably be out on Wednesday. I'm very bullish on Corning. Like, I've talked to a bunch of people over the weekend about this name, started doing some deeper due diligence. But let's get this to a real level where buying the dip would actually be enticing. Salesforce up 3. You got a red candle, but it is up 3, still in the midst of this red. Nokia down 2. BlackBerry still up 4. Intuit's up 2. So the software names are still green, even though they have candles to the downside. The semiconductor names are just straight up going red. Nvidia 221. AMD was just at 440, bro. Such fakes across these green candles. Now it's at 415. SoFi 1588. Can you name 5 players on the Knicks? I can name Jalen Brunson, and that's probably it. Anobi or something. There's some. Oh, Cat Williams. I think that's the only 3 that I can name. Netflix 89. Iren down 6. Qualcomm down 3. Micron just above 700, but really fighting for those levels. VIX is up 2%. Again, for those asking why this sell-off, I don't think it has to do with VIX or oil. I think it does have to do a little bit with bond yields, which we'll look at in a second, but I think it's really a continuation of that Friday momentum to the downside. I mean, it just kind of looks like the semis want to take a breather, and maybe that's what we're seeing, but the bond yields might be helping out with that. Wait, sorry, it's not Cat. Wait, but his name is Cat, right? Hold on. Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Oh, sorry, Carl Anthony Towns. But they call him Cat. That's why. That was bad. That was actually really bad. That was really bad. They call him Cat, though. They like. Okay, let's talk about bond yields. And let's hope you guys forget about this in the next 5 minutes.
Since the 30-year was first sold in Japan back to 1999. Why is this happening? Well, the common thread here is that the inflation picture is elevated, right? The longer the war goes on, the higher oil prices stay, the more these countries and economies have to deal with higher inflation. But there's also fiscal concerns that are right front and center, especially in the UK, where there's a leadership challenge with Keir Starmer. And of course, there are questions about the fiscal picture there in Japan as well. This new budget that has to deal with elevated commodity costs means maybe we'll see have to see new supply, more bond sales in Japan. They have to raise more debt. That's always a concern. These are very indebted countries, high debt to GDP in the United States as well. But inflation is the common thing. And the reason I'm watching this really carefully is because you've got a bit of a disconnect between bonds and stocks. Bonds are telling you, worried about inflation, worried that central banks aren't going to be able to cut, may even have to hike. Stocks are hanging in just fine. Usually, stock market doesn't like to see higher bond yields, but this stock market has been okay with it. Why? Well, AI and earnings. I mean, I think we have to just show you what's happening. Citigroup has a great chart of earnings expectations.
Again, when yields go up, stocks shouldn't be going up with it. But the earnings expectations, it's so repetitive. We keep saying it over and over again, but that really is the story why the markets are holding on.
And just what usually happens this time of year with earnings expectations and what's happening now with earnings expectations. Now is the purple, which is sharply higher than everybody else, which shows that corporate America is killing it right now. And the expectations are that earnings. So something's got to give, right? We have this strong earnings, strong stocks, but high bond yields, worries of inflation. which one is going to impact who the most?
Yeah.
Ultimately, like, our stock's going to have to catch down at some point
Yeah.
with these rising bond yields.
B of A today, Savita takes her 2026 number to $335 in EPS, S&P earnings. That's 22% growth. Meantime, to your point about stocks and yields, thanks Schwab, the rolling 30-day correlation between stocks and the 10-year is deeply negative and at the lowest since 99.
Which is why the market is as high as it is. So if you take $335 a share from Bank of America, you put a 25 multiple on it, I mean, you get to 8250 on the S&P. If you put a 27 multiple on it, which is I think kind of where we're at right now, you get to 9,000. Not this year, but next year. So you still, which means you're getting closer to levels that are significantly higher, especially if you pull forward that growth, which means theoretically it could happen this year. Microsoft's still red. And, I think that's why the market continues to be a bit more bullish. Ford is discussing deals for military trucks in Europe and North America. Wow. Has Ford ever sold military trucks to Europe? I don't think they've ever done. No, they have. But has it happened recently? Like, is that a major part of their business? Like, is that something where they, obviously World War II, sure, but excluding World War II, like in the past, 10 years, forget 10 years, 5 years of earnings, have we seen Europe military trucks be a significant part of Ford's businesses? Trump just posted, if Iran surrenders and admits their navy is gone and resting at the bottom of the sea, and their air force is no longer with us, and if their entire military walks out of Tehran, weapons dropped and hands held high, each shouting, I surrender, while vividly waving the representative white flag, and if their entire remaining leadership signs all necessary documents of surrender and admit their defeat to the great, powerful, and force of the magnificent USA, the failing New York Times, the China Street Journal, aka the Wall Street Journal, corrupt and now irrelevant CNN, and all members of the fake news media, will headline that Iran had a masterful and brilliant victory over the United States of America. It wasn't even close. The Democrats and media have totally lost their way. They have gone absolutely crazy. President DJT. I was wondering where he was going with that for a second, because I thought he was going to say, I need Iran to do XYZ, waving of the flag, walking out, saying I surrender in order for him to release the sanctions. I thought that was going to be the punchline of it. But obviously the punchline ended up being the fake news media. So, okay, that was not really the tweet we wanted. The tweet we wanted was a confirmation of the headlines of the morning, which is that Iran is getting close to a deal and they're ready to freeze their nuclear ambitions. That is not necessarily what Trump said. However, Trump did, I guess, kind of say that. I mean, I'm really reaching here, but I think he's it's almost like he's setting up the good news and he's trying to frame the narrative as like, hey, I'm about to drop good news, but when I drop it, just know the media is going to spin it and act like it's not good news, which he did before the tariffs as well, pretty vividly. And so maybe there's a world in which he's trying to blame the fake news media because he's about to drop the actual news we're all waiting for. And he just wants his base to be comfortable about interpreting the news. But that's also probably a lot of cope on my end. So we got to see. We'll follow it throughout the day. NVIDIA 222.45 as that continues to go red. Okay, so we've all forgot about the Cat Williams thing, right? We're all done with that. We don't have to bring that up anymore. We got a Trump tweet. That Trump tweet came in handy, bro. We needed that to help distract. We need another big market event. We need another big thing we can point to so that everyone forgets about that. I still see some comments about it. We need to forget that ever happened. Dude, his name is, they call him Cat. I really freaking thought, like, I just have, I don't know. I don't know how the Williams part came out. Thoughts on buying CoreWeave here over Nebius. So our boy Tanner just took a position in CoreWeave. Now he's had Nebius for a while. I think he bought it like 102, 103. So basically at the same price. Look, I think Jose's analysis on CoreWeave is really strong. And I think at the end of the day, if you believe in the the compute shortage, then CoreWeave, Nebius are going to be big winners. However, yeah, Nebius has run a lot, and it's now valued more than CoreWeave. So, I mean, is CoreWeave a little bit more attractive from a valuation perspective? Maybe, but Nebius also has a lot less debt than CoreWeave. So I don't know. You got to get really in the weeds and see which one you think. Obviously, Nvidia is a way bigger supporter of CoreWeave than Nebius. And so you have that with you, right? If CoreWeave fails, and Nvidia is probably going to really try to help it. And if CoreWeave succeeds, Nvidia is going to try to uplift them as well. So if it's literally CoreWeave or Nebius right now, I mean, maybe CoreWeave just because Nebius has run like crazy and CoreWeave hasn't. But from a diversified, holistic view, I think Nebius has a lot more going for it than just GPU licensing. Now, CoreWeave has a lot more of that core business. They have $100 billion in backlog. Nebius does not. But Nebius has AV Ride, ClickHouse. Like, they have so many different elements to it that are a bit more exciting. Micron back down 695, continuing to get red. I ran 49.45. That is also continuing to go red. Jace, thank you for the super chat. I just said currently right now in a legal call with a client. You're a bad influence. This super chat is sponsored by CrowdStrike Gains. Thank you. You know, I think that whatever legal call you were on, Jace, you really stress the point of it happening, whatever it is right now, because you also reiterated it with the currently right now. That's kind of the whole point. That's why the motto is the time is currently right now. The whole point is CRN. It's happening now. You have to take advantage of the moment now. So hopefully that legal call went well and the person you were talking to understands the urgency around your endeavors. Dude, I'm giving parenting advice today. I'm giving legal advice today. And I'm, referencing celebrities as basketball players today. This is a pretty weird Monday morning. Dan Ives, he's live. Here's what he has to say about Nvidia earnings coming up.
Look, we're going to have some of these white knuckle moments, whether it was Iran, whether it's rates, special wars coming in, but it just continues to be the risk on trade because this fourth industrial revolution, like we said, it's top of the third inning, one out. And that's where we are. And I think you're going to continue to see these dips get bought.
Why do you say especially with Warsh coming in?
Because I think there's just worries, him coming in, what does it mean for tightening? Worries about rates. If you look at just like when any time a chairman comes in, what the stocks do over the next 3 to 6 months. So there's definitely nervousness. The bears will come a little out of hibernation mode and you'll see them scare some of the bulls. But the reality is that we are still early in this trade in terms of AI. We'll hear from Godfather of AI this week. And that's going to be just another important data point in what we see as this plays out.
You have the best nicknames for all these different companies and CEOs. Vance, want to get your thoughts on this, especially given the fact that if you do look at...
So, the interesting thing about what Dan is saying is kind of the narrative has been pretty consistent over the past coming weeks, which is that none of these macro concerns are stopping the CapEx spend. Nvidia, are we about to lose 220? Which I agree with. If the CapEx spend is not going down, we're going to be okay. And I don't think Nvidia is going to guide for it to be down. But, these stocks have also made a crazy freaking move with the implication that CapEx... if CapEx does slow down now, look out below. Like, we cannot have that happen. Corning just lost 180. But hopefully we get a bigger dip and CapEx stays stable, and that's just a better entry versus like a reason for that type of a dip. Ondas down 9.6% here on the day as well. Tesla is dumping. Is Tesla actually dumping? Yeah, 3%. Dude, Tesla was freaking 450 last week. It's like Elon going to China, buy Tesla. Elon comes back from China, no deal, sell Tesla. That's almost exactly what happened with Nvidia. Tesla was just a little bit more dramatic, but 410 right there on Tesla. When is Nvidia? On Wednesday after hours. Mitch, you have the Chicago meetup vlog? Yes. So I will link Chelse's vlog right here. She did an awesome job vlogging the experience. So for those that have never seen a meetup, you can watch this video right here. I'm linking it. You can definitely subscribe to her channel as well. She's a vlogger and she's also super big into stocks. And so you can check out what the Chicago meetup was like. Yes, I did spill wine on the table. It wasn't my fault though, bro. Like Steve was like, "Oh, are you not going to finish your wine?" And then I go to pick it up, but I had already kind of drank something else, and so I feel like I was a little tipsy, and then it spilled. Like, what I mean? Like, it is what it is. Like, I wouldn't say I was drunk. It just like happened to, there's like a tingly feeling in my body, and I couldn't really pick up the glass, and then it fell. So it is what it is. But thankfully, it was at the end of the night. We had all pretty much ate our food. But yeah, I did end up dropping the wine. Micron below 690, bro. All right, so they're really taking her down today. They're really taking her down. Yeah, Doug, you were there. It was Steve's fault. He literally called me out. He's like, "Amit, why didn't you finish the wine?" And then what am I supposed to do? I tried to pick up the wine. It didn't go so well. It is what it is. It is what it is. All right, who's buying the Micron dip? Who's buying the Micron dip? 695. This is a dip, right? 818 to 695 is a dip. Like in no world, if you bought this at 800, do you not think this is a dip? But obviously, if it gets a little more ugly, I am actually interested in Micron if we get a real dip, like a real dip. To me, this is not a super big dip, given I didn't buy it at 800. But if I did, I would think it would be. But I also think I'm being so greedy, and I don't think I'm actually going to get like a serious dip here. But if we did, it would be, a bit more enticing. CoreWeave down 6. That's about to lose 100 potentially. What's your thoughts on Caterpillar? Great industrial play. The problem is this thing is also run a lot. So I think the alpha's kind of gotten hit there. Year to date, it's up 45%. So I don't know. I wouldn't be buying it here. Are we buying CoreWeave? CoreWeave looks more attractive. All right. So, okay, let's do this. Put one stock and one price level where you're like, no matter what, I'm buying. I'll tell you right now, Corning 160, I'm loading the boat. If we actually see 160, I'm loading. I don't know if we easily see that, but if we do, that's like a very, very attractive opportunity. Nvidia 190 again, I'm probably buying. But don't put a level that's like $2 away from the current price. Like put it a level that's like legit. Okay, you're gonna open up the piggy bank and really start buying. Microsoft 350 again would have to be a lot more exciting. Meta, I've been buying, but at this point, Meta's got to get to like 570, I think, to really get more attractive here. Micron 500, Micron 550, Nebius 100. Okay, so that's a 50% draw. I don't know if we're getting 50. I feel like with these targets, you have to be realistic, but you also have to be a little bit greedy because it calls for being greedy. But you also have to be like, okay, is Nebius going to $100? I don't think so. Could Corning go to 165? Yeah, I think that's not crazy. Micron below 600, I also don't think is crazy. But I wonder if that would actually be the dip. Oracle 125 is only going to happen if all the software names get hit again. Because remember, Oracle, when it fell to 135, it wasn't because of the data center headlines. Like that was somewhat involved. It was really the SaaS apocalypse April 13th. I remember that day very vividly when we got the beating. And so I feel like Oracle would need software to get hit pretty hard. Intel 70. That'd be 30% from here. Bloom 175. Fuel cell is the one I think more people are starting to talk about as well when it comes to energy. Fuel cell energy, we talked about them last Friday. So I've been looking into that one a little bit more. Lumentum at 550. Yeah, see the optics play. If you believe that optics is the next bottleneck, then I don't know if these stocks can get hit that hard. Like they can get hit, but like is Lumentum really going to get hit by 40%? Like another 10% from here, I could see. Even 20%. A lot of these names, 10 to 20%, I think they have downside. But 40, 50%, I think is like something's wrong with the AI narrative. Or, the oil situation is just really, really bad. But they've persisted even in the midst of oil being as bad as it is. Rocket Lab 126. Rocket Lab's very close to going red. Lost the entirety of the pump today. SoFi as well kind of lost a decent amount of pump, but 1586. AXTI 80, I do think is very possible given how volatile this thing is, down 10%. AAOI is that below 170. That is just at 170. Are we pumping again on oil? We are. Oil green for the day, 106 on oil, which means we got head faked in the pre-markets. Kind of makes sense. Again, I don't think anything changed too much. But you're seeing it now in the market open get hit. Nvidia, here's an update on the options market going into earnings on Wednesday.
Oliver Rennick at the SIBO in Chicago. Let's got to look at what the options market is saying about that upcoming earnings report. Oliver.
Good morning, David. Nvidia is the highlight of the week, with options volume currently trailing only the SPY, QQQ, and SPX. The options market is currently pricing in a 7% move, though traders have had a habit of overpricing the stock's earnings reaction. The median move over the past year was just over 3%. Right now, more than twice as many calls are trading than puts, but at least as many calls were sold as bought by volume this morning. In terms of dollar amount, the data start to look more bullish. $500 million of the total $600 million in premium traded in Nvidia is in calls, and 5 of the 10 biggest trades out of the gate in the entire market this morning were Nvidia, 4 of which were $10 million plus purchases of expensive, deep in the money calls expiring this Friday. And there's also a lot of speculation happening on the zero-day front. About 15% of currently traded options premium and half the total delta is in contracts expiring today. Keep in mind, last week ended.
Dude, there are so many DTEs on NVIDIA. NVIDIA's on a Wednesday, and that's an option expiry day as well for the large caps, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. So there's going to be a lot of volatility going into these earnings.
With the brutal multi-billion-dollar wipeout for those who held in-the-money contracts that flipped worthless in Friday's sell-off. Options traders, though, are getting right back on the horse this morning. Today's most popular contracts are the 227.5 and 230 strike calls, both out of the money now, which means an uphill battle, guys.
So we've been open for about an hour and a half for the market today. Here are the top 20 options that have been traded so far. Nvidia, 500,000 contracts. Tesla, 459,000. Intel's number 3. Then you got ServiceNow. ServiceNow hasn't been in the top 5 in a while. Then you have Micron. Then you have Microsoft, SoFi, Nokia keeps showing up. 86,000 calls, 15,000 puts. People are just getting really bullish on the calls for Nokia. Apple, Google, Amazon, ASTS, Palantir, CoreWeave, Google, Poet made the top 20. A lot of calls versus puts on Poet as well. 51,000 versus 18. AMD, Meta, MicroStrategy, and then BM&R as well. So you do have a decent chunk of option volume coming in to all the semis. SPY is still flat. It was red. I mean, it's still red, but basically flat. Micron 698. Micron's defending the 685 to 695 level, not easily giving it up. Could see it flipping back to 700 pretty quickly. It is well below the VWAP today at 721. It's also below the 9 EMA. Yeah, Micron's, every time it's gone this low, though, it's made a rebound back up to like 760, 770. Every time. So we have to see if it can keep retaining those levels. CoreWeave 100.87 as that continues to go red. Yeah, what is the RSI on Micron? On the daily, it's 45. On the monthly, it's like 35, which is not... Sorry. On the monthly, it's 51. I mean, that's not super overbought, but that's not super oversold either, right? Corning down 5.7 as well. ServiceNow still flipping green. Seagate headline at a JP Morgan conference today, management has sparked fears in investors that the company won't be able to keep up with the soaring demand for memory chips. Seagate down 8% right here, getting hit worse than the others. Chief Executive Officer David Mosley said building new factories would, quote, take too long and potentially set up the company with more capacity than it needs. Wow. When asked during a Monday presentation whether Seagate plans to expand manufacturing capacity. See, this is the part of the memory trade that's really weird. Why is the CEO saying building new factories would set us up with more capacity than what we need if the entire world is saying we don't have enough memory? Now, from his perspective, he's saying, quote, it would take too long. But do you guys see the irony here? He's like, it's going to take too long to set up memory fabs. Let's say it's going to take a couple years, 3 to 4 years, right? I think on average, it's 5 to 7 years for a new memory fab. Let's say it's going to be 3 to 4 years. So then why is anyone buying the memory stock or the memory stocks? If the CEO himself is not willing to invest over the next 4 years in building new factories, how can you project earnings for the next 4 years? And how is that consistent with this narrative that we have unlimited memory demand when the CEO is saying if we build new factories, we would have more capacity than needed? I thought we need as much capacity as possible. And I know Seagate's not Micron, it's not SanDisk, but that is a little weird when you try to piece together exactly what's happening. It's to hold prices up. Yeah, but then that's a boom and bust then. If they're trying to artificially make the demand larger than what it is by keeping the supply low to keep their gross margins up, eventually that collapses. Like there's no if and or buts about it. Eventually that story dies out at some point, which then begs the question, can you hold Seagate or Micron or SanDisk for the next 10 years? Like someone tell me the flaw in that argument. Chief Executive Officer says building new factories would take too long, which means he's not willing to make the investment because he doesn't think theoretically in 5 years that NVIDIA is going to need as much memory. Otherwise, if NVIDIA needs it for the next 5-10 years, why would you not set up more factories? How would you not invest? And then it says if it's going to create more capacity than needed, then you're assuming eventually it's going to go boom bust because we're not going to need as much memory as people are saying we are. How is Corning not cyclical? No, the photonics plays are also cyclical, but the photonics plays are in an industry that's expanding rapidly. Whereas the memory story has been known for a while, right? The photonics story really this year started getting attention as demand for photonics versus copper started ramping up. Now, memory also started getting a lot of attention this year, but the point is the memory story is pretty well known and a lot of the alpha has already been priced in and the boom and bust on memory has been a lot more aggressive. But the photonics are also cyclical. All of these are cyclical is my point. The question is, what part of the cycle are we in and how much have individual stocks massively appreciated and brought forward that earnings growth of the quote unquote cycle if it is that cyclical. Now, the other side of this equation is that the Seagate CEO is wrong and, his company in particular is getting the boom bust nature of the cycle incorrectly. And, the Micron CEO, if you've listened to Sanjay talk, says we can barely supply to the hyperscalers and this is going to be a very long story and, earnings might not fall off a cliff in 2028. But when you hear comments like that, it definitely begs a question of what exactly is going on here? And how is it playing out? Again, I'm open to hearing the response. What is the response? Why is the Seagate CEO saying building new factories would take too long and potentially set up the company with more capacity than needed? NVIDIA's not saying, yeah, we're not going to stop we have too many GPUs. We don't need to make more. We don't need to invest more in our supply chain to make more GPUs. No, they're investing every last penny they have to make more GPUs. Same thing with Intel on CPUs. Same thing with AMD on CPUs. So I'm a bit more curious about that. Energy cyclical as well. Well, energy, I'm not sure energy is in the same type of cycle as some of the components of the chips because you need the energy for the data center to function and we're putting up more and more data centers. It'll definitely be a cycle. I don't know if the energy stocks are priced as if the cycle has peaked already, especially because, the bottleneck around energy seems to be a bit more intense. At least that's what Jensen said over the weekend. Jensen did a talk at Stanford and he spent a lot of time talking about the energy bottleneck as well. Kind of made a broad argument. He can't tell the future. He thinks demand won't last 5 years. Yeah, but that's scary. Demand should be, again, Micron's at $1 trillion, basically, 900 billion. If you're buying it at $1 trillion, you should assume the pathway to 2, 3, 4 trillion is possible, which means you can't buy something at that valuation and assume it can't massively grow over the coming years. Like it has to be able to grow over the coming years. Because they have to have sustainability of earnings, right? That's the whole point. You're buying Google at 400. You assume that Google will sustain their earnings growth over the coming years. Even if the growth slows down, they will still grow. And they won't go from 20% growth to 2% growth randomly. And even if they do, they're going to buy back a lot of their stock, right? There's got to be like a reason to stay bullish on that earnings story. SPY right there, 737. As that continues to go red. Colorado public health officials are investigating the death of an adult resident as a result of hantavirus. Oh boy. We haven't talked too much about hantavirus. I hope we don't have to. I hope we don't have to keep talking about it. But we have to keep monitoring if that continues to get worse. Axios, Iran's new offer is insufficient and it risks war resumption, as per a senior U.S. official. That's probably why we're continuing to see oil go up right there. Axios, senior U.S. official, Iran's offer is insufficient and risks military escalation again. Oh, Cactus, is that official? U.S. rejects latest Iran peace proposal ahead of situation. Goodness, bro. What an absolute... If this is accurate, if this is legit, that the U.S. has rejected that proposal, which means the Axios quote I just read was also probably legit, then the pre-market pump was literally a pump and dump. That means that was just purely manufactured headlines that we were getting a deal, which, we dealt with in March many, many times. And we're actually not. Maybe that's why Trump tweeted the whole fake news post that he just put out. I was trying to see the optimistic side of it, but he just tweeted again. The worst congressman in the long and storied history of the Republican Party is Thomas Massey. He's an obstructionist and a fool. Vote him out of office tomorrow, Tuesday. It will be a great day for America. Okay. There you go. It's because Korea is better at making memory than the US. There is this memory narrative bias. It's a cartel-controlled commodity, according to Google. Didn't the CEO of Seagate said they would rather invest in new technology rather than fabs? Yeah, but that means their business would have to diversify heavily from what they're doing right now, which is fair. And that's actually probably a bull thesis, but that also means their earnings power is going to have to change dramatically. And investors will have to feel confident that they can grow outside of their core business in 5 years. But to your point about the Koreans, yeah, I mean, Samsung and SK Hynix, it is basically a duopoly on memory in that country. But their stocks have appreciated rapidly because of the amount of demand that's out there. But again, how many fabs are they going to create as well when it comes to the impact of what those fabs could be on global memory prices? Google right there, 402.93. Is Cloudflare at 160? No, it's at 200. Okay, Cloudflare is holding on. 160 would have been a buy on Cloudflare. It dipped at 184 on earnings. Where's Akamai? That is at 150. Okay, so that's relatively flat. Was the strike issue solved with Samsung? To an extent. The courts gave them a bunch of approvals yesterday, so I don't think it's officially resolved. It's resolved enough to where Samsung flipped green last night, but not fully. The MOVE index is rocketing. That is correct. Let me pull up a picture of the MOVE index. This index is actually really important. So this is essentially VIX for bonds. And the volatility of bonds have been pretty bad. Year to date, wow, look at that. We're up 28%. Today, we're up another 4%. You don't want bonds being super volatile, right? Because it's the cost of financing the country. But obviously, you're seeing a lot more energy there. We're talking about a highly elastic item. He can't compete with the supply from others after 3 years. Yeah, dude, I don't understand the memory story that well, so that's why I'm staying away. I feel like it's appreciated. So again, if Micron gets to stupid prices, I feel like it would be more exciting, but it's really tough for me to hold this when I don't understand the cycle, and I'm not going to blindly believe people that this time it's different. You could say that for AI as a thesis because I believe in AI. I don't know if certain parts of the AI stack, it's going to always be different. Like, you can't say AMD and Micron are the same. They're obviously incredibly different. And AMD creates a very specialized product that is highly differentiated. You can't say Nebius and Iren are the same. Both part of the AI stack, but one has been winning and one has been losing. So there are certain elements. Now, Micron is a really important one. And again, I think Micron will be fine over the coming months. I don't think this thing is collapsing by 50%. It's just the upside at these levels. The same for SanDisk. Like the upside on these levels is a little hard to stomach given how much they've appreciated. I mean, would you sell CoreWeave to redeploy into more Amazon? Depends on when you bought CoreWeave, right? If I'm looking for capital appreciation, no, because Amazon, it's done well this year, but I mean, compared to the AI names, it's been absolutely crap. So I think CoreWeave gets to 150 way quicker than Amazon can get to like 320. It's also Amazon's a much larger company. Safety-wise, obviously, yeah, I think Amazon's a better bet. I do think Amazon 300 by the end of the year is still possible. It's just every time this one makes a move, it's not like Google. Google makes a move, gives back a little bit of it, then comes back, and then it like stays at a new level. Amazon, we thought 275 was broken, and then it just can't get back above 270 and stay there. But it still is up 18%. Iren is up 1,000% in the last 12 months, but apparently it's losing. Yeah, but again, how many people bought Iren at $3, $4? Like, come on, guys. I can admit Palantir's a loser this year. And I'm not going to be like, well, if you scroll out 5 years, Palantir's up 2,000%. It's like, well, not a lot of people bought and held at 7, 6. Not a lot of people knew about it at that time. So, yeah, if you're an OG Iren shareholder and your cost basis is 5, you don't give a shit. But most people did not buy this thing at $5. Like, let's just be honest. And so in comparison to the price action, and I say this as someone who has some Iren at $43, but we got to be objective here. What's the headline on Zeta? I don't think there's any headline on Zeta. I didn't see any headline on Zeta today. But that's still up 9%. Do you think the upside to NVIDIA is higher than Micron or SanDisk? No, I think the upside is on Micron or SanDisk. But the safety of holding NVIDIA to me is easier to stomach than Micron and SanDisk. Again, they will all go down if they go down together, but I think NVIDIA won't get nuked. At the same time, Micron went from 300 to 800, NVIDIA went from 190 to 200. So obviously the alpha was in Micron. But it's just this narrative that people are like, I'm going to hold Micron for the next 5 years. I'm like, oh, okay, I can stomach holding NVIDIA for the next 5 years. I don't know if I can stomach holding some of these more cyclical names for the next 5 years. But maybe this cycle again truly is different, and every name in the cycle goes up. It's just there's a lot of due diligence to be done there to kind of make sense of that. AMD 419 as that is still down. What is your take on T1 Energy? I have not looked into this one. There is actually a big retail community on this name, and I think it peaked at like $9 back in January. It's one I think this and Fuel Cell deserve a little bit more attention to go deeper into when it comes to the energy names. Obviously, Bloom has taken off. Bloom right back up, right back down 5%, 250. Is this the lowest we've seen Bloom? No, the lowest was on May 8th at 249. Okay, so May 8th was a pretty ugly day for all the semis. So we're basically testing those May 8th levels today. And we got to see if we break those or we hold above it. When the CapEx stops, the cash flow is going to the companies that were spending the CapEx. Yes, I agree. That is your Meta, Microsoft, Google, Amazon thesis. But when the CapEx stops, I am kind of scared, bro. Because when the CapEx stops, decisively, all the semiconductor names, they're going to get wrecked. Like we all know they're going to get, unless they've been able to build a business model that is differentiated enough to not need the CapEx. Like all the picks and shovels are going down. All the Max 7s theoretically should have a lot of free cash flow to go up. And then the other big concern is like if the CapEx stops or like significantly slows down, have we reached AGI? Have we solved all the things we need to solve? Which I find hard to believe that's going to happen over the next couple of years. So hopefully it's a 2030 story versus 2028, 2029. You know, the party continues to keep going. And then, yeah, Jensen, he would disagree. He would say the CapEx is probably not stopping anytime soon. This is what he was saying at the Stanford conference around energy and AI more broadly.
The amount of energy that we need for computing is likely, probably 1,000 times more than we currently have. And that's an enormous amount of energy. However, the way to think about that is in the future, computers are going to be two things. It's always going to be generated because it's intelligent, it's contextually aware. So it's going to be generated. And then number two is going to be continuous. And so you this generative computing in a continuous way compared to pre-recorded retrieval-based computing that is only initiated on per use. The question is how do you think about the amount of energy necessary for that? So I think if you say we need it 1,000 times, I wouldn't be surprised that we're off by a couple of orders of magnitude. And so we need a lot more compute, we need a lot more energy, and so you got to go and explain this to people. And so you got to explain it to people in a way that's kind of common sense and they can observe it, and there are indicators along the way that in fact this is happening. And notice, just as I was breaking it down for you guys, I'm reasoning about it for you so it's common sense to you. And so the amount of energy is high. And then lastly, the source of energy. There's all kinds of sources of energy, but unfortunately, because of great concerns about the cost of sustainable energy, we underinvested in sustainable energy. But this is the best time ever in the history of humanity to go and invest in sustainable energy. And the reason for that is because the market forces are so strong. Back in the old days, you needed government subsidies to go build solar farms and government subsidies to go build nuclear plants. And now you can just, market will pay you to do it. And so market forces are so powerful right now. This is our best chance to upgrade our grid, our archaic grid, add sustainable energy of all kinds, and
He's right. I mean, our grid across the country and quite frankly across the world is archaic, and so if AI is the catalyst to make the upgrade, there's a reason why some of those names like Enphase, I mean, microinverters and the new product they released last week was the reason it was up. But you would imagine we need all sources of energy, and that could present an opportunity. Here's the FCC chair. He's live right now talking about SpaceX and EchoStar as the IPO comes up.
Without the need for a middleman, a first for the company. AT&T will use the new spectrum to expand service in rural and underserved areas. The FCC calling the deal a, quote, win for America's leadership in next-gen connectivity. Joining us now in a CNBC exclusive, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. Chair Carr, welcome back. It's good to have you.
Yeah, good to be with you. Thanks so much.
So on this deal, what is your vision, and how do you convince the public that you're not just overseeing a sale here of scarce, valuable public spectrum into the hands of the dominant wireless company and the dominant satellite company?
President Trump's policies are delivering real results in the area of both connectivity and U.S. leadership and technology in general. And they're starting to pay off with results. We're already seeing last year alone, prices for wireless services down 10%, speeds up 50%. And these transactions that we approved just last week could be one of the most consequential weeks for the country in terms of connectivity and global leadership. So on the one hand, you have spectrum that was laying fallow, going into the hands of a provider that's using it to increase speeds, AT&T, by 80% already in areas where they've lit that new spectrum up. And on the other hand, you have a large chunk of spectrum going to SpaceX that can use it, to your point, for this new technology called direct-to-cell. People have been used to pretty good satellite connectivity to a small dish wherever they go, but think about having direct-to-cell right to your smartphone. Effectively, a satellite is your cell tower. So global connectivity, more competition, driving prices down. So I think this is going to be a real important turning point for the country.
Except if you think about SpaceX in that way, if they control the infrastructure and also become a gatekeeper, isn't that anti-competitive?
We don't see it developing that way at all for a number of reasons. Again, the trend line is prices are down, speeds are up, but we're also looking at multiple competitors in this space. Our vision is to have 3 or more providers of direct-to-cell connectivity. In fact, Amazon is making a very strong move in this space. They just announced plans to purchase Globalstar, which has spectrum that Amazon can use to develop direct-to-cell. Amazon's team, led by Panos and his team, are doing great work, and we're going to allow them to compete. AST is another provider in this space. We're seeing multiple providers in that direct-to-cell space. That was part of our game plan as an original matter, and we're going to let the market and consumers ultimately decide from there.
All right. You got the AST mention. You got the Amazon Globalstar mention. Obviously, the SpaceX mention. Bitcoin, unfortunately, below 76. Obviously, the FCC wants to have a competitive environment for it, but, the people that are AST is going red zone, the people that are, touting SpaceX as deserving of their valuation believe that eventually SpaceX will become, they were already the global leader, but will become the most dominant force when it comes to connectivity. And that's part of the reason you pay the premium for SpaceX. SanDisk down 7, CoreWeave down 6, Nebius down 10, Micron defending 700. It's not easily giving that up. ServiceNow up 6. So you've got at least that rotation being a bit more obvious. Lumentum down 10, Intel down 1. Intel was down a lot more, so that's actually not too bad. Palantir's basically flat, down about 1%. Oracle down 4, Corning down 6. And then Nvidia and AMD, they're not down as badly as some of these other plays that we got. But Bitcoin is the one that's getting hit the worst right now. Bitcoin 76,000. Malta becomes the first country to... Is that a real headline? Hold on, let me see. If that's true, that would be kind of incredible. Yeah, Malta becomes the first country to offer ChatGPT Plus access through national AI literacy initiatives. OpenAI and the government of Malta are today announcing a world-first partnership to roll out ChatGPT Plus to all citizens. The initiative will provide access to intelligence and empower citizens through an AI literacy course to build practical AI skills and benefit from the technology in their everyday lives. Dude, ChatGPT must love these partnerships. Like, they can lose so much money for so many years on compute, but if an entire country is using their model, they're not going to switch. So it's just like instant user base that gets hooked onto the product. Tesla losing 410 right here, as you're seeing that start to go down a bit more. Isn't this a top signal? No, I wouldn't say this is toppy. This is just OpenAI being smart and expanding. See, but this is why ChatGPT and Claude are winning. This is why Gemini to me is kind of dead from the consumer angle. I get the enterprise using it, but outside of AI overviews, I never use Gemini. I just don't. Grok is dead to me, and then Meta AI is dead to me. It's really GPT and Claude are just, they've taken over this entire market, and they continue to win at an incredible level. It doesn't look like they're easily slowing down. I get people use Gemini. I just, there's a reason Google did not disclose the number of monthly active users on Gemini. They do it every quarter. They didn't do it this time. And no one made a big deal because they grew cloud 60%, so no one really cares. But why didn't they disclose it? It's probably not that good growth. It went from 450 to 650 2 Qs ago. And then this Q, we just get no mention of it. So to me, I think they want to give themselves some more time before they can announce a more meaningful number. Yeah, a lot of you guys like Gemini. I use Gemini to fact check ChatGPT sometimes because Google has connected to real estate, but it's not like a personal assistant for me. It's not something I would go back and forth and have a meaningful conversation. It's like if I want a historical fact, I'll get it from Gemini, but a conversation tends to happen with GPT. And I think the lack of them disclosing those numbers is kind of obvious. They're not at 1 billion monthly active users. So, and I think that's when they want to announce it, but it's taking way longer for them to get there than GPT. And I think it's people are, choosing what's working with them. CRML down 9% as well. Gemini can read YouTube. Yeah, that's fair. It can like summarize YouTube videos. But again, that's useful. I don't know if that's the biggest use case though, but it does help. Gemini pissed me off today by refusing to translate a text for me. You know what the models need? They need transcription with audio. So I need to be able to like post an MP3 file and have it be transcribed. Now I know that takes up a lot of compute, but that would be so useful. And they like none of them have meaningfully allowed that to happen yet. Okay, so the main headline right here is the US officials reject latest Iran proposal. I think the US will be talking to Israel pretty soon today. And if they decide to take another course of military action, I can't see how oil prices don't go up again. As oil's still at 106. Malta has 500,000 people. Well, that's 500,000 new users for ChatGPT. Maybe that's why. Oil still up 10-year. Are we back at 4.6? Yeah, we are back at 4.6. Gemini can go through your photos and your maps. Yeah, look, if you're in the Google ecosystem, Gemini is good. But I'm talking about more broadly when I want to have a real conversation about an issue I'm having in life. What bot do I go to? I'm not talking about with my photos or my maps or my this or my that. Like I'm talking about like, hey, I'm confused. I want to write out like multiple paragraphs. And I want a therapist almost, like or a life coach or a business coach. Like I want like a real intimate experience. It's ChatGPT and Claude, dude. It's not Gemini for me. It's really not. It's definitely not Grok. Like it ends up being GPT. And for some people, maybe it's Gemini, but I've never been able to get that close to Gemini, I guess you could say. But GPT is a lot better at those conversations. Nebius down 9. As that one's also down. It could be your dentist. Yes, maybe my dentist. I don't go to a bot to that. Okay, if you don't go for a bot, I guess you have $400 for a therapist per hour then. I go to a bot when I'm confused. Dude, honestly, ChatGPT is better than any therapist. I don't think any therapist could replicate the level of emotional intelligence and then obviously intellectual rigor that the models have. Because they can dissect every angle of every situation. And you're just like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. Versus having to like pay a human to like listen to you, you know? Amit, aren't we your therapist? That is also true. The chat is definitely a form of therapy. Sometimes it's comedic because I end up saying Cat Williams in the wrong use case, but dude, I can't believe I said that shit. I think it was a good 2 minutes of me talking about. That's how you know I wasn't trolling either, because I would have started laughing within 30 seconds if I was just trying to like mess with you guys. I said it and I went back to like really analyzing the stock market until I saw the spam of comments laughing, and I'm like, what did I just say that is causing this? Don't pretend you don't have a $400 therapist. I've never been to therapy, which is maybe a bad thing, but I believe in it. I think therapy is a good thing. I think everyone should have someone to talk to, but you know, if you can't afford it or if you just feel uncomfortable talking to like an actual person, I really do think the bots, you can describe the shit you're going through and it can help you. It really can help you, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Nebius, are we still down? We're still down 10. Space names are starting to go a bit more red. Lunar's down 3. Okay, so everything's just going red. Don't give personal information to an LLM. That ship has sailed. Like, if someone hacked ChatGPT and tried to ask it everything about my life, it would know a lot, bro. It would know a decent chunk. Sam Altman has all my data, all of it. Hasn't anyone seen those memes where it's like you know, those memes where like a guy's going through a girl's phone and like instead they go through her ChatGPT and it's way worse than going through her DMs. It's like the shit that we say to these bots has become so vulnerable at this point. Micron once again below 700. Like some of the most obscure scenarios in my mind, I'll throw it into ChatGPT and be like, what do you think? And some of these answers, dude, they're like just to get you to think a little bit about like different perspectives are just incredible. So, but that also is part of the, you know, memory thesis as well. Okay, what else do we got going on? How is it 11:30? Where has the time gone? We watched like 2 clips. Have I really been yapping that long? Usually we like watch something that takes us into the 11 hour. Okay, I think that's it for today. Sundar just did a conference with Mark Benioff. Oh man, they're trying to pump this thing before the earnings. Sundar just did a conference with Mark Benioff. Google has an event this week, by the way. Google has an event this week. And so, that also is probably a reason Google's pumping. They might announce, I think it's Google I/O. I was supposed to go to this thing, but I said no, dude. I'm so tired of traveling. I'm so freaking tired of traveling. It's in California. We can live stream the session though. The session is tomorrow at 1. Okay, no, we can't live stream it tomorrow, but we'll definitely keep up with whatever happens here. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Let's get an update on video earnings and then see if there's any other headlines, and then we'll be done for today.
So the Bloomberg Tech co-host Caroline Hyde, she joins me here on set. So, I mean, this is the big daddy. This is what we've all been waiting for, right? And it comes, late in.
See, if I was on Bloomberg, I would say that. This guy is not supposed to say Big Daddy. He's just not, okay? If I was hosting it, I would say it. But I don't know if this is the guy that you want saying it. I don't know.
Center revenue target. Let's discuss with the Bloomberg Tech co-host Caroline Hyde. She joins me here on set. So, I mean, this is the big daddy. This is what we've all been waiting for, right? And it comes, late in earnings season. They have to beat and raise.
And even when they do, sometimes the stock still falls because everyone's already kind of looked at what the hyperscalers are spending, understanding that $725 billion capex for the rest of the full year, and can just see a wall of demand coming NVIDIA's way. We want to get a little bit of context of how much like TPU over at Google or some of the basically the ASICs, the bespoke chips being made by the hyperscalers, whether that's eating in at all. But look, this is a $5.4 trillion company that is posting more than 70% revenue growth. This is inexplicable in many ways from the exponential nature of the company, but we want to hear about how they continue to ramp. Yes, you know that Blackwell is doing really well from an architecture perspective. How is Vera Rubin doing? How is the CPU trend doing? How are some of the purchases talking of M&A? Remember, they bought in this rather odd acquisition, Grok, with a Q, not a K. How is that working in terms of the inference needs that they're getting? That's sort of some of the intricacies we want to get to grips with. But this is a stock that is relatively cheap, remember, in terms of its forward guidance. The PE ratios are like 24 in the forward 12 months. So people still think it's still relatively available to buy at this level.
Amazing at this.
Dude, the whole world is going to be waiting for what they show on Wednesday. We'll be live as always for NVIDIA. 222 down about 1.4% of the day. Again, red day. We'll see if it stays red towards the close. And we'll see if that red ends up continuing. I'll see if Chris can hop on today because he wasn't able to hop on last week. So maybe we do some macro stuff with him today. If not, then we'll see how the market ends up closing and taking a look at some of these headlines. Bitcoin obviously getting hit today, but I think a lot of this sell-off is a continuation of Friday, Micron being a champs at holding 700, S&P down about 0.4, but it's also these bond yields. At some point, the market's going to stop ignoring it, and 4.6 is just not sustainable at this point. Yes, we will have Technical Tuesday tomorrow. We don't have any big earnings this week besides NVIDIA, so we'll still be able to do TT. And then we'll keep going from there. All right. I think that's pretty much it. Main summary for today. Bond yields up, oil up. Looks like the White House is getting pretty serious about military escalation again as they're talking with Israel. This is why I need... This is why I always need to be on Do Not Disturb. The few times I'm not on Do Not Disturb, I get a call. And it's probably a spam call. Or a margin call. Who knows? No, yeah, Apple's saying it's spam. Why can't they just block spam automatically? Like, why do they have to let the call go through? Anyway, it seems like the main headline for today was oil's up, the 10-year's up, the White House rejected the peace proposal, so we'll see if they actually engage in military confrontation. And then the semis are continuing their sell-off from last week, which isn't that surprising given, the semis have run up a lot, but it's more concerning if people will come in to buy the dip. And I guess we're going to find it's Cat Williams. That was so bad, dude. That was so bad. I'm going to go back after the stream and watch that and see how serious I was after that versus where the comments were. That was so freaking bad. All right, word of the day. Impalpable. Impossible to calm, satisfy, or stop. The market can feel placable. Implacable. Implacable when momentum turns against you. Implacable. We did 5 words correct. Let's see if we can get 6. Implacable. I think we're going to get it.
Implacable.
6 in a row, dude. I've been messed up for a week. We almost messed up on this, but we fixed it real quick. There you go. I thought the A was before the L. Implacable, impossible to calm, satisfy, or stop, and being relentless. All right, cool. That is it for today. That was Jensen calling. That was not Jensen calling. However, in the next 20 minutes, I will be taking a meeting with the assistant of another CEO who's not Jensen, but it is someone else who will be on Basis Points this week. And I think you guys will be pretty excited for who we have. So that episode will be out on Friday, and it should be a good one. I think people will be excited. So we have some good episodes coming out this week. Again, thank you for all the love that people have been showing on the recent episode and the past couple weeks of episodes we put out. But this will be a fun one this week with some more of these different CEOs. It's not Lisa Su, unfortunately. One day, hopefully. One day. But I think people will still enjoy it. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. I will see you guys when the market close, and we'll keep going from there. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. See you guys in a few hours.